If you will now, actually, if I can ask somebody to make a motion, we'd like to propose a motion for one of our school board members, Ms. Richardson, to participate remotely.
I will move that we allow Ms. Richardson to participate remotely this evening.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Myers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. All right, and now if everybody will please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. And now if you'll please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much. And Madam Clerk, if you would now have roll call for board members.
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Burns? Present. Ms. Cooper? Here. Ms. Dooley? Here. Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Ms. Richardson? Ms. Torres?
Yes,
And our student rep, Ms. Heapy?
Here.
Thank you so much.
thank you. And now I would entertain a motion for approval of our agenda, please.
I move that we approve our proposed agenda. I second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you so much. All right, now we are moving on to comments from members of the community. So we do have some people here in the auditorium or in the media center who are signed up. So as you come up to the podium, if you will please state and spell your name and share your address, and know that you are limited to 3 minutes for your comments. So first on our list, we have Mr. Hartline.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Gurley. My name is Derek Hartline, 1517 Antoinette Avenue, Charlottesville, Virginia, a lifelong city resident. I'm here this evening to follow up on Joe Westcott's memorial granite bench that had been a Buford for 30 years. This past summer, Nielsen Construction was given permission by CCS to demolish it in order for the Buford Middle School modernization to begin, as discussed during the January 4th board meeting. This disrespectful act requires accountability. As educators, we are encouraged to use restorative justice in school with our students. I feel it appropriate that the same is done here in regards to the bench to restore relationships and rebuild community trust. A discussion needs to occur on how to repair the harm done to make things right. W.A. Hartman on East Market was where the original bench was purchased. I went there last month and got a written estimate on the cost to replace the bench at today's price. A comparable bench would cost $6,100. I'm asking that this amount be included in the budget now, so by the fall of 2026, when students begin to occupy the new building, the bench can be ready for the grand opening. This evening, many educators will be honored for their hard work and dedication, which is outstanding. Priority number 3 of the new strategic plan is to support our staff. Their recognition is well-deserved and not to be forgotten. The same must be said for those staff before us who made an impact worthy of being memorialized, whether it be a bench, a library named for an individual, or even an entire school. Just this past month, a care and safety assistant at CHS passed away unexpectedly. On January 17th, Dr. Gurley shared his condolences by email and also shared Mr. Leatherwood's caring words that included, "We will forever hold dear his memories, and we celebrate him for being an outstanding, amazing colleague, community member, and friend." This showed real compassion and empathy, but I was taken aback when that very same day, January 17th, the position for that job was posted online. The system didn't even let a school community mourn one day before wanting to replace him. This is an inconsiderate way to treat a valued employee. Should have been handled differently. Allowing a couple of days of reflection wouldn't have hurt anything and still given time to post for this weekend's job fair. Supporting staff, present and past, within the division must be a priority in your goal to increase the retention rate. My final suggestion this evening, as Dr. Gurley goes over the proposed budget tonight, please relook at the slide on elementary class sizes projection. It has Jacksonville, Iowa with 3 kindergarten teachers in the fall of 2023, when it's actually 4. I wanted this to be brought to your attention as it might affect the projected numbers of teachers needed for the 24-25 school year. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Smith.
Anne Marie Smith, ANNMARIE SMITH, 810 Fendel Terrace, Charlottesville, Virginia. Good evening, school board members and Dr. Gurley. I've been a proud Charlottesville City Schools parent since 2006. I did the math last night when my oldest daughter started kindergarten at Venable. My youngest is now a senior here at CHS. I've always said, rather ineloquently, that the Charlottesville City Schools are a beautiful, somewhat imperfect attempt to do something extraordinary and challenging. Our schools bring kids together from every diverse corner of Charlottesville. Additionally, we bring kids from all over the world together. This is a hard and lofty thing to do. Ideally, we do it so our kids can learn independently with and from one another, so they can be together, so they can appreciate and support one another, and so they can enrich and expand each other's lives. Of course, this is a work in progress, and not all course offerings are as diverse as we would like them to ultimately be. But one place, among others, that you can see this dream crystallized is on the CHS track and field team. Go watch a meet. You will witness teenagers of every shape, size, hue, background, encouraging and cheering for one another as they run faster, jump higher, and throw farther, all the while being encouraged by caring adults. Have you ever met Coach Green? He's the best. I would argue, but this is a discussion for another time, that the coming together is in fact more important than the faster, higher, and further. In this moment of challenge and bad press, we need more of what is happening on the CHS track team. I'm here tonight to, both as a parent and a member of the Black Knight Athletic Club, to request that the school board join us in asking the city to finish the wonderful Curtis Elder Track and Field Complex by installing lights, so our students, athletes, and community members remain safe when using the track. Last year at the one and only track meet hosted by CHS, more could not be offered because of inadequate lighting. I watched, frankly, fearfully and terrifyingly, as the pole vaulters, including my son, vaulted in the dark with the only available light from someone's cell phone. This was incredibly dangerous, and we're lucky that no one was hurt. In addition to keeping athletes and community members safe, installing lights would allow CHS to host more home track meets resulting in funds that would in turn support the team. As an aside, it might mean that you don't need to listen to parents like me ask for funds. Please join us, and by that I mean the Black Knight Athletic Club and parents and community members, in supporting the crucial learnings that happen in the Charlottesville City Schools in places such as the CHS track. Let's ask the city to install the lights. The posts are ready and waiting, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Orban?
Good evening, school board members, Dr. Gurley. My name is Andy Orban. Live at 807 Locust Avenue, and I'm a parent of two Charlottesville High School students. They're both on the track team too, and one Walker Upper Elementary student. So first of all, I'm very pleased to see the concerted efforts of the school staff and community to meet the student needs and address the safety concerns that were raised by teachers early in the year. So thank you to everyone who contributed. I'd also like to praise the arts programming at CHS after seeing the wonderful fine arts showcase last night. So tonight, I'm here to share my concerns about the proposed plan to install metal detectors at CHS. This plan needs substantial input from teachers, students, and the parent community. Once the full scope of the plan is understood, it's imperative that the school board has a vote on it before any implementation is to occur. I'm concerned that installing metal detectors will send a negative message to the community. It would say that there are reasons to be afraid and that students aren't to be trusted. It's important for students and visitors to CHS to feel welcome the minute they approach the door, are greeted in a friendly manner, and immediately assisted. Currently, some of the CSA staff approach kids with a guilty until proven innocent attitude. This mentality is detrimental to students' well-being, and adding metal detectors would only further the image of CHS as a dangerous place in need of control. We know the majority of CHS students come to school ready to learn and engage appropriately. We should be investing in the people resources that are effective at preventing violence, like hiring enough counselors and mental health staff. We shouldn't subject our kids to screenings that takes up valuable time when they would be required to unpack their bags to take out things like Chromebooks, laptops, water bottles, phones, and such. I feel like it's an invasion of students' privacy to be subject to regular searches. And there are often things like changes of clothes for athletes, hygiene products, and so on that kids have in their bags. And I understand there's also an option of using metal detectors only at school sporting events or other gatherings, but I don't know that there's any existing problem that this is solving. Other schools in the areas aren't, doing metal detectors at their events. And we already have the clear bag policy in place, and so it seems like that would be an unnecessary use of funds. I'm also concerned about the cost that would be involved in buying and also operating the metal detectors. We should be using our funds to enhance a positive school culture at CHS. The funding should prioritize hiring and maintaining excellent staff, allowing them to be paid for things like teaching extra sections of class, and putting money in improvements in athletic facilities like the lights at the track and the arts, and fully staffing all the alternative programs like the night school so that every student can get what they need. Purchasing metal detectors and paying to staff them is not the best use of our limited funding.
It's your time, Mr. Orban.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on my list, I'm sorry, I think it's Mr. Smith and Ms. Gupta.
Hello, my name is Callan Smith, CALLAN SMITH.
And my name is Sahana Gupta, SAHANAGUPTA.
And I live at 810 Fendel Terrace.
So today we are here to talk about the track lights. We are both seniors on the track team and have been participating in track and field for the past 4 years. Last year, we had 7 state champs come out of the track team alone.
Yeah, so as Sahana said, we've both been on the track team for 4 years, and I was a state champion in the pole vault, and I think
Yeah, and I was state champ in the 4x1.
and kind of like specifically I'd like to go into, because I know about pole vaulting the dangers that not having lights at a track presents. Like obviously pole vaulting, it's kind of a unique sport. You're like sticking a really long pole into a hole in the ground, and this becomes especially dangerous when it gets dark outside and you can't see. So like we really don't have an option at CHS once it gets dark, which happens around 5 o'clock in the winter, except to stop pole vaulting. It's just too dangerous. As my mom said, we've tried to like come up with solutions like shining a phone light on the like pole vault pit, but that's just like really not optimal and does not create a safe environment. And kind of this just like stops me and my pole vaulting teammates from being able to practice past 5 o'clock, which compared to other high schools in the area like Western, who have lights at their outdoor track as well as an indoor facility, it kind of just sets us behind.
Yeah, and then on the other side of things, I do sprints and jumps. Often we try to get in baton handoffs, and when it gets late, you cannot see the baton, you can't see the people in front of you. So we do have to shut our practices down around 5:30, which just makes it really hard to get an entire practice in less than an hour. So yeah, and even though we are seniors and we won't be here next year, we really would like to see the track team continue to thrive, because we have come such a far way and have had many great accomplishments.
Yeah, like as we've kind of said, we've been able to have great success these past 4 years despite not being able to have lights. But I think for both of us, track has been an amazing community, and like even though we are graduating next year and it won't affect us directly, like we both want to see this track team be able to succeed safely. And even outside of that, a lot of the community of Charlottesville uses the track, and not having lights and it being dark past 5 o'clock creates like a dangerous and unusable environment for people in the broader Charlottesville community.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. All right, I see someone else approaching. Please do.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Lawn, Kathryn Laughon. I am a resident of Charlottesville and the mother of 3 children, now adults, who attended Charlottesville schools, 2 who fairly recently graduated. I was on the committee that worked very hard to look at school safety and came up with a plan to remove school resource officers. And that was really based on reading the research, on recognizing that school resource officers do not increase safety. And in fact, there's substantial evidence that they harm the academic outcomes, specifically of Black boys in schools, and that there were better ways to approach school safety. So I'm a little dismayed to hear rumblings of discussion about bringing SROs back to schools. I'm equally unhappy to hear about the discussion about installing metal detectors. I'm a researcher. I spent the weekend actually reading what is known about the effectiveness of metal detectors in increasing safety in schools. And the studies I read were pretty much unanimous. They're, first of all, very expensive. So I did some reading about that. They're expensive to install. Once they're installed, they have to be maintained. They also need to be operated. So there's an increased personnel cost, and those personnel need to be trained. So there is not just the one-time cost, but really ongoing money that could go to different personnel in the school. I also read about the dismal effectiveness of metal detectors. I don't know how we all feel about learning this, but studies of TSA agents find that they have actually pretty dismal rates. I see someone nodding of finding weapons that are put through TSA when they're tested. And those are probably, right, the folks who are most well trained. That's their one job, is to do this. So they don't. There's also some studies that have looked at are schools actually safer with metal detectors, right? If we look on the ground, does that in any way increase safety? And no. I won't go into details, but there are a number of stories of incidents that we are probably aware of violence involving guns in schools and other settings where metal detectors were present, where the metal detectors absolutely failed to protect anyone in that school. Additionally, what I read was that the presence of metal detectors actually decreases perception of safety for students and parents. So putting up those metal detectors makes everyone feel less safe, not more safe, even if they're there as a visible reminder that there are safety measures in place. And they also harm the relationships between students and teachers. So controlling for a bunch of other factors, I'm happy to share the research that I found. Schools with metal detectors actually have worse relationships between students and teachers. And that is something we actually know does increase school safety. So that's the last thing we want to be harming. So I hope you guys will consider that and think of other ways to keep our schools safe. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Next, anybody else here in the media center?
Hello, y'all. My name's Nick. I was very compelled by what the last person was saying, and I find that tracks with readings that I've done about weapons detection systems and the presence of SROs. I also think there's an opportunity cost. That's money that could be spent, and I know y'all are just looking into this. You're not making a decision tonight, but there's an opportunity cost. That's money that could be spent on events like we had that some teachers put together that really got kids excited about being in school and feeling like there was a culture and community and that relationship building that even an SRO or a police officer is going to say is going to be the number one thing that determines the safety of a community. So I think that we could spend money on things like that. And I'd really be interested in us exploring a more robust restorative justice process in our schools that is tied to consistent accountability. I would like to see that we have restorative justice specialists in every building every day. I think, pardon me. I think that could go a long way in making sure that admin who sometimes may be busy taking care of any number of tasks they need to do, or teachers who have an ungodly amount of things that they need to do. If we have someone who is here and present and dedicated to conflict resolution, either between student and student, or sometimes a staff member and a student, so that we can have that relationship, so that we can have that foundation for security. I think that will be money better spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here? Yeah, please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Marva Simpson, and I have a student here at CHS. I'm here to talk about internet usage and the abundance of it in this school. There are no parameters. My son is spending 80 to 90% of his day on the internet. There's no security. He can go on Twitter. He can play games. He can watch movies. And if my son is doing it, I'm sure there are a lot of other kids doing it as well. Mr. Gurley, I sent you an email on December 13th and I CC'd all of the board members. And it was in response to trying to get a staff person here at the school to help me on this issue. I don't know if you read it. I did not receive any response from the school. But I'll just read you 2 paragraphs to give you so you can capture the issue here. And again, this is a citywide issue. We're talking about money today. Do something with the money to secure these laptops, these Chromebooks. I'm an old school mom. I don't allow my son to have a smartphone or to just have this unfeathered time on the internet. I think he learns best with books. Okay, but here are the 2 paragraphs. Dear Mr. Hansen, I'm following up with a request to once again ask your assistance in intervening to help reduce Jay's internet usage. Jay continues to spend an inordinate amount of time on the internet. The internet usage is not related to schoolwork. Last week, when we talked shortly after his 18th birthday, you made clear that Jordan's internet usage is a private matter since he is a legal adult. I do not agree with that assertion. CHS has an obligation to make sure that Jay receives an education without exception. If a school-issued laptop is interfering with his education, that this needs to be addressed. Again, do something. I don't know, other school districts can do it. He shouldn't be able, and none of the kids should be able to go on Twitter, to go on all the social media sites, to just have all of this access. They're not learning. This is during instructional time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here? Mr. Koenig?
Good evening. My name is David Koenig. I'm a history teacher at Lugo McGinnis Academy and a parent of 2 students at Greenbrier Elementary. I just want to add my voice in support of the comments made by Mr. Orban, Ms. Laughlin, and my colleague, Nick McCarthy Rivera. I do not believe that we should be considering bringing police officers back into our schools by any name and in any form. I'm as concerned as anybody about the serious disruptive incidents that we've had at CHS. I'm open to listening to a wide range of solutions. I think there's a lot of room to talk about more robust restorative practices. I also think that student accountability for their behavior needs to be part of the conversation. But I draw a line at police in schools. Police are trained to make arrests. And when police are in schools, behaviors that can and should be handled as school behavior incidents all of a sudden get elevated to criminal justice issues. That is not fair to our students. Please do not consider bringing police back into our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Dana Ainsworth. I live on Gentry Lane. I'm a CHS parent. I'm also an educator. I'm curious about the use of multi-tiered systems of support in Charlottesville City Schools. For those who aren't familiar, MTSS is a school-wide tiered system of support that focuses on the prevention of academic and behavioral problems. Charlottesville City Schools participated actively with VTSS for many years. We had a coach from VTSS that worked directly with the schools. Several years ago, we moved to a consultant basis where we no longer utilized a VTSS coach, but rather decided to manage the program in-house. I see evidence of VTSS in the elementary and middle schools, much more in an academic sense than a behavioral sense. I don't see much evidence of it here at CHS, and I'm curious how we are utilizing a program that is already state funded and really well developed. I'm curious about our decision to withdraw from active use of a VTSS coach. And I want to encourage greater implementation of this program specifically at the high school level. I'm in education research. I study mental health in schools and the reduction of behavioral challenges, specifically school violence. The tool that we return to again and again and again in our recommendations is multi-tiered systems of support. So I just really would love to see greater transparency around how we're utilizing this program here. And I want to encourage greater funding, allocation of staff and support to this program. I think that when the structure is in place and followed with fidelity, it really enables us to focus on the prevention of behavioral and mental health challenges before they begin, rather than having to play catch up on the flip side of it. And I think that there's a lot of room for growth here at CHS in that respect. When the system is in place and it's working well, it much more readily allows for programs like restorative justice and mindfulness programs to be folded into it. So again, I just want to encourage this before we get too far down the road with SROs and metal detectors, to think about the programs that are available to us and are well structured and really, really focus on prevention and support. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to turn to our online presence and see if there's anybody that has their hand raised who would like to make public comment currently.
Yeah, I'll just ask anybody in the attendees gallery if they do wish to make public comment to please raise their hands so that we can promote you to speaking and have 3 minutes for comments.
Okay, and keep in mind, we will have another opportunity towards the end of the meeting. So thank you, everybody who's made comment tonight. We appreciate you showing up and we appreciate your concerns. So we will move on at this point. And we have public hearing comments on our proposed 2024-2025 budget. So I mean, I think we've had some of those comments folded in from people who are already here, but now would be an opportunity if anybody specifically wanted to come up and make comment about our proposed budget. And again, we do have an opportunity towards the end of the meeting if you'd like to hold on. All right, our next session or section on our agenda tonight is comments from students, which we've heard from 2 of our wonderful students, but this was a designated time and slot that we have added for students to come up. All right, thank you. And now we do have our opportunity for our student rep to provide a report or any comments or updates that you have.
All right. Thank you guys again for having me up here. It's always an honor to be here with you guys. And thank you guys all for coming out. It means a lot always to look out and see a group of people supporting, the students here and caring about our well-being. To be honest, I am very, very pleased with how our school system is running right now. I've heard a lot of great things from my peers. Just a lot of thanks to the administration for addressing a lot of the concerns. I really hope that we'll continue this hands-on approach with a lot of it. I think one of the biggest fears from the student body is, just addressing what's going on when it caught the public eye rather than consistently. With that, I also hope that we will continue to highlight the good parts of the school, whether that's being promoted in the media, but also within our community. For example, our girls basketball team is 20-0, which is crazy. Yeah. We had the story of one of our senior wrestlers featured in the Daily Progress this week. The Fine Arts Showcase was last night. Yesterday, there was a basketball game of the Medford League team that a lot of students showed out to, myself included, and it was amazing to see. So I just hope, again, that'll be encouraged because that's what people really need to know is that, this is a really great place with a lot of special people here and a lot of special things going on. I'd say that there is still, if I had one thing to say, is that there's still slight confusion that remains among students in new changes that are being brought up, specifically these new policies that are being talked about, whether that's the continuation of the phone policy, whether that's parking restrictions that are now in place, weapons detectors, as well as signing in and signing out procedures. We've noticed that there's been a lot more kind of cutting down, being strict on, where we go throughout the day, what's going on with that. And I know during times like these, we're all kind of processing things together. It's new to everyone, but at the same time, I hope that the administration will give the student body not only their voices, an opportunity for their voices to be heard, but also trust. While safety, physical safety is important for everyone in the building, it's also important to promote a productive learning environment and for us to feel safe. And so I just hope that that'll be considered through the rest of these decisions. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Heapy. Okay, we are next moving to 8.0, which is our student and staff recognitions part. Dr. Gurley, do you want to announce these?
I sure do. All right, first up, 8.1, we will have Dr. Odie come before us to recognize our principals for Principal Appreciation Week.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley, good evening. I stand before you today to recognize some extremely amazing people in our school division. We're going to show a picture of some really fabulous people that lead our schools. We're talking about our elementary, upper elementary, middle and high school, and alternative principals. Those faces there are our instructional leaders doing the amazing work of inspiring, caring, nurturing, loving, all of those things wrapped up in one to make sure our students and staff are successful. Virginia Principal Appreciation Week was observed January 14th through January 20th, and Governor Youngkin issued a proclamation just celebrating and acknowledging Virginia principals. I'm not going to read that full proclamation, but I just want to take a moment. And if I could, we do have our principals in the house tonight. So if all of our principals could stand up while we appreciate you, that would be wonderful. Remain standing. We appreciate our principals' commitment, their expertise, their knowledge, their love, their enthusiasm, their want for what is best for what our students at all times. They focus on student learning. They focus on student well-being and growth and development, and they support our amazing teachers each and every day. They inspire excellence at all times, and we appreciate them. Thank you so much to our amazing Charlottesville City School principals, and we love and appreciate you. Please join us in celebrating our awesome and amazing principals. And I'll just finish with one quote that stood out to me. I don't know who wrote it. I can't take credit for it, but it says, "The influence of a good principal can never be erased." So we thank you, we appreciate you, and we know that you will continue to do amazing things in our schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Odie. We will next have Ms. Rasnick with our National School Counseling Week.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Gurley, members of the board. Hard act to follow, but Governor Youngkin has recognized next week, February 5th through 9th, as School Counseling Week in Virginia. This year's School Counseling Week celebrates the unique contributions of school counselors as standards-based and student-focused educators. Comprehensive school programs are vital to the educational process for all students. Our school counselors are actively engaged in helping students examine their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents. They work in partnership with parents and caregivers as they encounter the challenges of raising children in today's world. They focus on positive ways to enhance students' academic, career, and social emotional development. and they work with all of us teachers and educators to provide a system where students can realize their potential and set healthy, realistic, and optimistic aspirations for themselves. So our school counselors are certified, experienced educators with a master's degree in school counseling, and the combination of their training and experience makes them integral to our total educational program. So tonight I ask that you join me in recognizing our school counselors and National School Counseling Week.
And next, we will have Beth Chuck for our school board recognition and our school board clerk recognition.
That is right. And I am going to keep it quick, but I hope you don't see that as a lack of appreciation. I would like to invite the community to thank you all, whether you have recently joined the board or just a few months ago, like Ms. Burns, Ms. Cooper, Mr. Meyer, or Ms. Richardson, whether you joined the board in 2022, like Ms. Dooley or Vice Chair Morse, or back to 2018, like our chair, Ms. Larson Torres. We appreciate your service. And on your behalf, on all of our behalf, I would like to thank Ms. Green and Ms. Thacker for the work that you do to help the board, help the community. Thank you very much, and please join me in appreciation.
All right, thank you all. Next, we have 8.5, the Teacher of the Year recognition, Dr. Odie.
All right, I'm going to ask for Ms. Lewis to join me. I just want to second our appreciation for the board and our clerk and deputy clerk this evening. Now, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Gurley, good evening again. Ms. Lewis and I are here to recognize some really important people this evening. I want to start by telling you all a bit about the Mary V. Bicovarius Virginia Teacher of the Year program. All public and accredited non-public schools are invited to participate in this program. This award honors teachers who represent the best of the best in teaching in the Commonwealth of Virginia and across the nation. To qualify for this award, candidates should possess a current renewable Virginia teaching license with an endorsement in a teaching assignment, specific teaching assignment. Candidates should be teachers who are exceptionally skilled and dedicated and who are planning to continue in an active teaching status. Candidates should play active and meaningful roles in their communities as well as in their schools. And the program is open to all teachers, including school librarians, technology specialists, school counselors, and reading specialists. This is the second year that Charlottesville City Schools has participated in recognizing these stellar teachers in this way. As I've shared previously, participating in the Mary V. Bicovarius Virginia Teacher of the Year program does not end our participation in the Golden Apple Award program. This simply gives our outstanding teachers an opportunity to not only be recognized locally, but we could have a teacher to possibly be recognized in the region, in the state, or even nationally. Tonight, we will be recognizing the Teachers of the Year for each of our schools. These teachers were nominated and selected at the school level by their colleagues. Ms. Lewis and I then worked with a committee of 5 Charlottesville City School staff members who reviewed essay submissions by each candidate in order to narrow down the list so we could identify a division Teacher of the Year. Because we had such great candidates, we then needed to select an external non-CCS member to review essay submissions to help to make the final determination. It's a good problem to have. Before we call our Teachers of the Year forward, I'd like to take a moment to thank the principals and administrators who helped to make this process go smoothly. I'd like to, we can give them another hand. And I'd like to call each committee member forward if they are here tonight, who helped to review packets for us. We have a gift, a token of appreciation for them. And I have these right here below me. I'm going to call their names if they are here. Miss Lewis, if you could help me. Dr. Tanya Coffey, Josh Herndon, Dr. Anna Isley, Rodney Jordan, Dr. Justin Malone. Let's give our committee a round of applause. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your already busy schedules to review essays and provide feedback about these wonderful candidates. And now we will call each of our school level Teachers of the Year forward. Each of them will receive a plaque here on this table and a small monetary gift. After we finish calling everyone, I'll ask that you come up to take a group picture holding your plaques. So be ready for that. From Burnley Moran, we have Ryan Trott, art teacher extraordinaire. From Clark, we have Catherine Gray, ESL teacher extraordinaire. From Greenbrier, Catherine Plunkett, librarian extraordinaire. From Jackson Via, we have Lily Brookman, another great art teacher. From Johnson, we have Leslie Scally, another amazing ESL teacher. From Venable, Cicely Shelton Barnes, another amazing librarian. From Walker, Summer Wagman, sixth grade ELA teacher extraordinaire. And from Buford, Mika Kawakami, history teacher extraordinaire. From here at CHS, Mr. Joseph Patterson, algebra teacher extraordinaire. And from Lugo McGinnis, we have Harry Hill, science and PE teacher extraordinaire. All right, so we're going to get a picture with all of these amazing teachers. You ready? Say cheese. All right. Thank you so much. Congratulations to all of our great teachers. I think you can head on back to your, and thank you to the families who have come. We're not done yet though. Now, congratulations, congratulations. As I mentioned, our committee was charged with using a rubric to score the essays that were submitted by candidates. There were some wonderful essays written, and I know it was quite the challenge for our committee. After compiling the scores and with the support of our external reviewer, though, we do have a division teacher of the year. We announced her on January 22nd, but in case you don't know who our Charlottesville City Schools Teacher of the Year, who will receive a trophy and additional monetary award, and will move forward to compete in the regional competition, her name is Catherine Gray, our amazing ESL teacher from Clark. We're going to get Dr. Gurley and Ms. Torres at least to take a picture with Ms. Gray. While they prepare for their picture, Ms. Gray has already been sending in the rest of her packet for her next phase of the competition. She did, I just haven't reviewed it. Congratulations, Ms. Gray. And congratulations to all of our teachers of the year. We're so, so proud of each of you and so honored to be able to work alongside you. Thank you again to our principals and our family members for being here to support, and congratulations again. Thank you. We have boxes.
All right, next up, we will have Dr. Cardell Patillo from the Virginia School Boards Association to bring greetings to our school board.
Good evening. I hate coming behind staff and students. They're always so much better than me. They are truly the stars of all of our school divisions. But as Elizabeth Taylor said to her fifth husband, Mike Todd, I won't keep you long. Ladies and gentlemen of the Charlottesville City School Board, Dr. Gurley, Chair Torres, Vice Chair Mr. Morse, it's an honor to stand before you as president of Virginia School Boards Association and a fellow board member of the Portsmouth City School Board. Dr. Gurley, Dr. Bracy sends his regards to you. On behalf of the entire VSBA Board of Directors, I bring you warm greetings. I want to express our deep appreciation of your dedication to education and well-being of the children in Charlottesville City and the broader Commonwealth of Virginia. Your tireless efforts do not go unnoticed, and your commitment to fostering a nurturing educational environment is truly commendable. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the invaluable contributions of a distinguished individual, Mr. James Bryant, who recently rotated off of your board. As a member of the VSBA Board of Directors last year, Mr. Bryant represented the Central Region with utmost dedication and excellence. Today marks the second stop on my President's Road show around the Commonwealth, and I couldn't be more pleased to begin this journey with you during School Board Appreciation Month in Virginia. Your role as advocates for the children in your community is both vital and challenging, and I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for the countless hours you dedicate to shaping the future of our youth. I understand that the responsibilities of being a school board member can at times seem tiring and thankless. However, please know that your efforts are making a significant impact on the lives of the students you serve, which was shown tonight. Your commitment to education is building the foundation for a brighter future for the children of Charlottesville City and the entire Commonwealth. At this moment, I'd like to share a proclamation signed by the Governor of Virginia, honoring school board members in the state for the month of February and recognizing School Boards Appreciation Month. This proclamation is a testament to the vital role you play in shaping the educational landscape of our great state. It reads Certificate of Recognition, School Board Appreciation Month. Whereas school board members are elected to represent the interests of students, teachers, parents, and other stakeholders. And whereas school boards play a vital role in ensuring the students across the Commonwealth have access to a high quality, rigorous education and are best positioned to uphold educational excellence in Virginia schools. And whereas school boards are the governing bodies responsible for the oversight, success, and effectiveness of school systems across the Commonwealth. And whereas local school board members work with parents, businesses, education professionals, and other community members to create a shared vision of success for students. And whereas these decisions affect the present and future lives of children and chart a path to prepare all students to be competitive in a local, state, national, and global 21st century knowledge economy. And whereas School Board Appreciation Month acknowledges the contributions, dedication, and service of Virginia's local school board members. Now, therefore, I, Glenn Youngkin, do hereby recognize February 2024 as School Board Appreciation Month in our Commonwealth of Virginia, and I call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. And it's signed by the Honorable Governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. Once again, thank you for your unwavering dedication. I look forward to continuing our work together to ensure a brighter future for Virginia students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patillo. Can we get a picture with the chair and the vice chair?
Great. I would like to move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you. How about a second to that? All right, so we have a first and a second. If there's any question or discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, that is accepted. We are now moving on to 10.0 items for discussion, please.
All right, first up, we have Ms. Powell with the school safety model.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Gurley. This is a follow-up to our ongoing conversations about safety in our schools. And this has been already mentioned tonight. We've seen great progress and stability at CHS over the last 2 months. And while that's very true, we are always committed to learning and improving, whether it's school-specific safety models or our division's overall approach to safety. So tonight, I'll be giving an overview of our safety model, providing updates about what has been recently implemented and what's in progress. And I'll present information about 3 options for Charlottesville High School where we are seeking additional feedback. These 3 areas are weapons detection, exploring a new model for partnering with the police, and possible revisions to the CHS cell phone policy. We know that there are varying perspectives on all 3 of these possibilities, and we want to hear from all stakeholders. And I want to again state, we are in the feedback mode at this time. We are not yet in decision-making mode. So next slide, please. First, before we start talking about the past, present, or future potential solutions, we want to make sure we anchor this discussion in our strategic plan, specifically all of the goals that support priority area 2, which is to provide a culture of safety, wellness, and belonging. Promoting safety is really foundational to well-being and community. In fact, it's just above the physiological needs for shelter, food, and water in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it really is foundational. All right, so looking back for a brief moment, in August of 2022, Charlottesville City Schools implemented a new model for school safety based on the following big ideas. First, the idea of strengthening our community and relationships through intentional community building and social emotional learning. Next was growing our mental health supports. As you recall, in 2021, we doubled our mental health staff, and we have been managing and working very hard to sustain that ever since. Third, we created the position of Care and Safety Assistants, our CSAs. These are DCJS certified school security officers, and they are a wonderful set of extra hands, and they are other trusted adults in the buildings and in our hallways. This is a model we borrowed from the schools in Toronto, and their motto was that what they call their care and safety assistants, it's more mentor than muscle. That was one of the taglines, and we certainly see the effectiveness of the CSAs and the role they play in our schools. Next, we committed to partnering with the community, including trying to very clearly define the situations with the police when we need to partner with them to promote school safety. And we continue to implement common sense security improvements, such as expanding our camera systems and our access control systems. You always hear me say this, and it is just worth saying again, safety is truly a matter of continuous evaluation and continuous improvement. So that's our current model for school safety and the big ideas behind it. Next, I want to talk about some of the modifications we made already since the initial implementation. So these are changes that occurred in the 2022 to 2023 timeframe. First, we restructured the operations department that I oversee to create a dedicated coordinator for safety and security as a position. Previously, we'd taken the position that was over housekeeping services. And initially, health safety being in the pandemic, very connected to overall safety, that linkage seemed to be, a good thing to keep together. But the reality is, as we move back to more in-person instruction, just the pure safety and security work needs a dedicated position. So we restructured to accommodate that. And we have expanded the number and locations of our CSAs. We added positions at Beaufort and CHS. And we also now have CSAs at Walker and LMA. And of course, again, every year we are continuing to add to our physical security systems. That's the cameras, the access control, lighting. We recently added additional lighting at LMA with night school for the exterior, things like that. That's always ongoing. Next slide. So initiatives that have been completed or are underway in this school year. Many of our improvements this year have been focused on Charlottesville High School, which has seen strong improvement under Mr. Leatherwood's leadership and the efforts of a lot of folks. This includes better practices for supervising CHS hallways and improving our in-school suspension operations. Underway right now, we are enhancing the access control system at CHS. That is adding on door alarms that are audible to alert people if there are unauthorized exits or door props for an extended period of time. There'll be an audible alarm. That work will not be able to start for another 2 to 3 months, according to the contractor. Everything's on order, but that will be fully in place by next school year. We recently received a mental wellness grant to Charlottesville City Schools for additional safety training overall, and also additional training for our school mental health professionals. And CHS is in the process of implementing changes, as was already alluded to by our student representative, for check-in, check-out, and the traffic patterns around the school and parking policies, things like that. That is in progress. And as I mentioned earlier, we are investigating possible next steps to continue improving the physical security, and we'll talk about that more later. So next slide, please, Leslie. So what are some of the challenges of our current safety model? And to be clear, all safety models have their pros and cons, but the cons of our current model are really focused in the area of coordination and communication with the police now that they are no longer in our schools every day. Specifically, we spend more time coordinating with police for participation in threat assessment teams, and threat assessments have risen sharply since the pandemic, and that is not just a local phenomenon, that is a national phenomenon. The fights that we have seen at CHS both last spring and also this fall have presented some challenges in how we assess and coordinate a response from the police when those incidents occur. And having a police officer on site also creates efficiencies in managing our mandatory reporting, and that mandatory reporting is outlined in the Student Rights and Responsibilities document and is all in alignment with Virginia Code. Also, working side by side with officers in the schools allows school staff to better understand community impacts on our schools, and also vice versa. For when things are going in the schools that may impact the community, it just makes that those understandings and communications more efficient and clear. So next slide. Again, we are seeking feedback in 3 areas for possible next steps for CHS to continue making improvements. One is the use of weapons detection, either at sporting events and or for school entry. 2 is learning more about the youth resource officers model that connect the Cambridge, Massachusetts Police Department with the Cambridge Public Schools. And 3 is reconsidering the student cell phone policy at CHS, and more specifically, how do we approach cell phone use during lunch or between classes? So we're going to dive into each of these areas a little bit more deeply. But again, these are the big 3 areas where we're going to be seeking input and feedback from all stakeholders. Next slide. Okay, first up, weapons detection. Weapons detectors could be used, again, at sporting events and or for school entry. Weapons detection at sporting events was actually initially recommended by the Charlottesville Police, and also I believe the Albemarle Police at the same time approached the county schools. At the same time, they made the suggestion that we go with clear bag policy. So we went forward with the clear bag policy. We were not prepared to go forward with weapons detection at sporting events. The discussion about weapons detection, it surfaces, or it seems to come to the forefront at times whenever there's a heightened concern about youth involvement with weapons in the community. And that it bubbles up to our attention either when, community reaches out to us because there are unfortunate events that actually make the news, the local news in the community, or social media posts that are circulating that raise concerns for people. That's when this conversation surfaces or resurfaces. Detectors are commonly found at public events and are increasingly common at high schools and even middle schools. Recently, Richmond City Public Schools has expanded the use of weapons detection from not just all their high schools, but all their middle schools. The systems are very commonplace, as most of us were probably aware, at athletic events and also entertainment venues. As this conversation would surface and periodically resurface, my department started doing research, and we settled that if something were to move forward, we would definitely recommend the CHEA Open Gate system. It is portable and good for both indoor and outdoor use. The system's currently in use at Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, and UVA has some of these systems as well. It's not the same exact system you see in use at airports with TSA. But if we did decide to pilot these for use at, say, athletic events, we'd need to start with a set of 2, and the cost for the equipment would be about $40,000. And there's no real setup cost beyond the cost of the equipment. If we choose to use them for daily arrival at CHS, we estimate we would need 6 sets to ensure, a good steady flow of traffic and not have it bogged down at entry. And the cost for that equipment would be about $120,000. For each set or gate, as they call it, it does require 2 staff members to work the gate, and there has to be an administrator in the area as well. And to help if there's like something that's not passing and you have to go through repeatedly, you want to take anyone in that situation, move them over to the side to make sure you can figure out what's setting off the detector. As with all 3 of the ideas that are under consideration tonight, we will hear a variety of perspectives about the impact of weapons detectors or the effectiveness of weapons detectors. And so our next step is a survey of stakeholders for feedback so that we can decide if and in what circumstances we would even want to begin using this technology. Okay, so that's weapons detection. Next one, thanks. I apologize. I went too far without asking Leslie to read the next slide. But anyway, that speaks to what I was just talking with. All right, so sorry about that. I got out of sync. Next one. So the next item up for feedback is consideration of exploring youth resource officers. And as we researched possible models for safety back in 2020 and in 2021, we came across a school division that is very much like Charlottesville City Schools in size, demographics, and community. It's another university community, and that's Cambridge, Massachusetts, near Boston. Because of a personnel situation that they were dealing with at the time, and of course we were all dealing with the pandemic, we were unable to fully explore their model at the time. We just really didn't get any information or connection with them. But we've always kept an eye on it. Cambridge Public Schools uses a safety model that is similar to ours with a team of safety specialists like our CSAs. In addition, Cambridge schools, is this still, yeah. Cambridge schools are also supported by the Cambridge Police Department's, they call them youth resource officers. These officers have the focus on relationship building and diversion of youth from the criminal justice system. The diversion program is something that seems to be a big central focus. The youth resource officers are not based full-time in schools, but they are regularly present in schools as well as active with young people in the community. Benefits from the model of having a regular youth officer present on campus are improved communication between schools and police. It enhances the ability to schedule threat assessments and crisis management team meetings, reduces the school administrative burden for mandatory reporting to police, and it gives students and families another opportunity or a touch point to get support from these public servants when needed. Next slide. So Charlottesville City Schools is in conversation with the Charlottesville Police Department for a joint exploration of this possibility. Chief Kachis has been able to successfully connect with the Cambridge Police to learn more about the model, and he's gotten a good sense of how the model works. Again, he spoke very highly about their diversion, the diversion processes within the model. If there is community interest, we will continue to explore this model, including a possible field trip to Cambridge for Charlottesville leaders to learn more. If things check out, we would continue to brief you and then start developing a plan, including costs for consideration. But before we go too far in learning more, again, we want to hear from the community. So our question for the stakeholders is, do you want to explore the idea of adding community youth officers to our current safety model? Next slide. Okay, so the third area where we're seeking feedback is regarding the cell phone policy. And that is, again, something we consider to be part of our overall safety model and ecosystem. The current policy is off and away the entire day, and that began earlier this year. And we have had excellent cooperation at Buford, which has correlated this with positive school culture, and they are having a great year. At CHS, there has been strong in-classroom cooperation, but phones are still seen between classes and at lunch. So we are at a decision point. Do we maintain current policy at CHS or make a change to the policy? To maintain the current policy at CHS, we would need to change enforcement, requiring a big effort of staff and leading to, at least in the short run, more students relinquishing their phones for the day. If we were to change the CHS policy, we would allow high school students to use phones in halls and at lunches. Next slide. So, as you know, this is another issue where people have very different perspectives, and we want to encourage people to consider the why behind the policy in providing their feedback to us. If the focus of the cell phone policy is on learning, then concentrate on phone use during class period time. That would indicate a policy of off and away during class periods. If the focus of the cell phone policy is taking a broader view of learning, mental health, and cell phones' role in contributing to or aggravating students' poor behavior choices, then the all day, off and away for the entire day is the more appropriate choice. However, bear in mind, CHS staff will then have to adjust enforcement, which can feel like a big lift, especially at the beginning of this change. Families and students, again, would need to expect to see more students relinquishing their phones, at least for the day. So I want to reiterate, no changes are under consideration for Buford. The policy is working very well there, and hats off to the students and staff. But as for the CHS policy, we are hoping that the survey will help us better understand what people's goals and thinking are in order to help everyone decide what the next best step is. So, Leslie, what is our plan for survey and public engagement? Again, 3 areas: possible use of weapons detectors at CHS and in what capacity, possible exploration of adding youth resource officers on top of our current safety model and plan, and then possibility to change the CHS student cell phone policy. So how will we be gathering feedback? Again, first of all, clarification, the stakeholders are staff, families, students, community members. Ways of gathering feedback. The survey will open on Monday, February 5th. So there's going to be Parent Square in the website. There's going to be social media promoting it, media coverage, public events. During Black Night time at CHS, that's a good time to get feedback from the students. And then conversational feedback gathered through students and family interactions with school and division staff. And I want to add one more thing to that. I'm coordinating with the CHS leadership team to facilitate discussions just with the CHS staff to help make sure we hear their voice and that they have all their questions answered as we move through this process. Next slide. So again, the safety model is based on relationships. And I really want to make this clear, and I've said this before, right after we had the reset. It is absolutely correct that our model and our priorities focus around the relationships. I firmly believe that is the right foundation, no doubt about it. But there is always room for a continuous improvement, and the technologies change and the threats and concerns change. And so we always have to be re-examining what we're doing. Changes such as the side door monitoring, additional cameras, and improving the check-in and checkout procedures, those things are already underway. And again, we're seeking the feedback on the 3 questions. Do we want to begin using weapon monitoring systems at sports events and or school entrances? Should we continue to explore the possibility of having a regular police presence at CHS or any other schools? And do we want to consider a change to CHS's student cell phone policy? So please keep in mind, we all want the same things. A lot of times folks just have really different perspectives on what's the best way to get there, what the priorities are. And so we look forward to continuing the process with the community.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to hold them all. So we're going to start down here with Mr. Meyer, and we're going to go one by one, and everybody get your mic time within reason. And then if we need to, we can go back around again. So go ahead, Mr. Meyer.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. And one, I'll just say to start, I do think you have the overall best strategy. And then again, what you just, I think, commented there, Ms. Powell, about the relationships is most important. I guess the questions is, I mean, you have a lot of questions here that I think you want to get feedback on from. And what, for example, I'm interested in the youth resource officer. I think it's very different, if I understand it correctly, from the SRO, but you have here a little slide on it. Is there going to be links to information with more descriptions about that program in the survey? So when people are providing input, that they'll be educated on it? Because I think when people see that, they're probably just thinking SRO.
Right. I can work with Beth Chuck to try to make sure we provide everything that we can until we actually go and see the model. I don't know that we have all the answers either that we will want, but.
I'll just speak to how the survey is constructed. When we do surveys of this type, it's often kind of what we might call a learning survey, where the first section of the survey just offers links to even come watch this presentation. That's the first chunk of the survey. If people choose that they want more, but even front loading the answers are the bullets, many of the bullets from this slide, to give people a sense of it, to help them get informed about how they would answer the question.
Okay. Second is, are weapons detectors effective at anything?
So
Maybe that's a loaded question, but
I'm not going to debate what different sources and different reports bring forward about that. The one thing I will say is that these inherently detection systems are intended to be a deterrent, meaning that the knowledge that the presence of the detection system is there ideally deters someone from bringing contraband into the space. So it would be very difficult in my mind to disprove that they're effective as a deterrent. But I would not dispute all these other data points that people bring forward saying how they may affect people psychologically or so forth. This particular technology, we've spent a lot of time with the folks up at Thomas Jefferson's Monticello. The head of security there has been a great host. It's pretty effective technology at finding even small things, but I'm not going to stand here either and say I'm an expert that it finds everything every time, but it finds it's fairly effective. You have ability to control the sensitivity. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. The sensitivity of what it's looking for. It's a very robust system. It has almost zero installation costs, maintenance and calibration, also not an issue. This system, if there is a choice to move forward, and it is a choice, I'm confident in the choice of technology that we would bring forward. The system, I believe, would definitely be the best one for us. But
yeah, I agree. If we're gonna go with a system, I think the system you guys identified would
Yeah.
be the one. I'm maybe obviously don't think this is where we should be going, but second.
Hold on, Mr.
sorry.
Meyer. If it's the will of the board, what I'd like to do is just ask that we ask questions right now, since we've started with weapon detection.
Right.
Let's stick with that so that we can keep kind of the conversation.
Are we going weapons and stuff on quick? Okay,
Yeah,
stop.
and then
Sorry.
we'll rotate to the next, if that's okay. So, Ms. Burns.
Sure. Thank you. Relationships matter. We talk about that all the time, and want to just briefly speak on the CSAs that we do have in place at our schools. I have relationships with many of them. Being a parent in the school, I see the interactions that our children are having with our CSAs, and they are invested and they are doing great work. And those relationships do matter, and that's what translates to safety. And so I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the work that your staff has done and that Ms. Lewis is doing to hire and to fill the openings, to make sure that we continue with providing that resource to our students.
And I'm very glad that you mentioned openings, because there were multiple openings, and people may think that something was posted, but we had one of our CSAs actually move into a different role in the school division, and so different things have caused openings to occur. And unfortunately, we have quite a few right now we're working to fill.
And I think that speaks to the relationship piece as well. JD has been a great staff member for a long time. To move from the role of a CSA into a teaching role is fantastic when we see our employees move from one space and further their own education to move into another space. So I appreciate this as an entryway to build those relationships.
We've had that happen before. We had a great female CSA last year who's actually working full-time or part-time in the walk program. So there's that. Yeah, that is some great stuff too. I'm glad you
I
touched on
appreciate
that.
that story as well. I question on, will all staff, visitors, students, everyone who enters the building or enters an event, will they be required to go through the weapons detector system?
So the idea is, yes, that if you implement it for that purpose, to screen everyone who's coming in the building, you don't need 6 gates, and these systems are so portable. I could pick them up. You collapse it from 6 gates down to one, probably just one really after the main entry, if it were used that way. We estimate we would need to be operating 2 gates for our sporting events, football, basketball, things like that.
Okay, but to be clear, on a school day, we would expect teachers and staff and students to enter through one point and go through the same process.
Staff could be, those are procedural things that could be debated. As staff park all around the campus, I don't, that would be something that would need to be determined if it is decided to move forward with using this type of technology for general building entry.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is there a trial period that we perhaps, if we decided to move forward with this, that we could gather some data without a commitment?
Potentially, like I definitely, it's an interesting idea. We could potentially train staff and use it at like a sporting event and see how we liked it, give it a test run, that kind of thing. We can certainly see these systems in operation elsewhere, but again, the setup is not extensive. I'm not sure if we could get a trial on site, but we certainly can see this exact system in operation nearby at other places.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Morse?
I have no questions or comments regarding weapons detection.
Thank you. Ms. Cooper?
Oh, sorry. I think my questions has already been asked by Amanda and Chris, so I'll pass it to Emily.
Okay. Really quickly, I would just like to know like where in the process we really are. I think there's been a lot of things thrown around, miscommunications about what's going on. Some people are saying that they're already ordered and on the way. Some people are saying that this
They're
is the
not
first
on.
step. I was just wondering, like,
No, thanks for
clearly
asking.
to state, I think it would be great, if we had transparency around, where we are in that process.
We pretty much made the selection last spring of if it were to go forward, not having any idea if or when. No, there were no discussions of it really. Well, I can't say it comes up sometimes because someone will have a concern and they'll ask, why don't we have it? Either because of something that's happened in the community or because they hear about it at other schools. But so we've been kind of just sitting on this. We did the homework because we didn't want to be in a position where if there is a decision that we need it, that we're scrambling to figure out what to do, what it looks like, et cetera. But absolutely no purchase orders have been made. We did, in the context of the reset, we've had the vendor on site once just to confirm what we were thinking from what we'd seen elsewhere about how many it would take and what it would look like here. So there's been one vendor site visit, no purchase orders.
Okay, I have one more quick question. I don't know. I just want to bring, I guess, to everyone's attention, especially at sporting events, and like school activities. I think as a student here, I've noticed that has been one of the highlights of this entire year with, again, our both super, super talented girls and boys basketball teams. I haven't ever been, in the gym with that many people as there was, a few weeks ago, from the community, from the school, from everywhere. And I just want, I don't know, I know that's not really a question, but I just wanted to make that clear, just because, putting these even at those times, which are supposed to be completely fun and, harmless and happy, implementing those metal detectors, and I think which are some of the most important and meaningful events for our community in the Black Knight community, could possibly deter people away. And I know that's not fully a question, but I just wanted to, I guess, bring that to your attention and just, I know you guys are the experts, but ask if that's in consideration at all.
I think it goes back to what your comments earlier and the comments from other folks, like there's a psychological impact potentially. As much as people may go through them at UVA, at JPJ, or any concert venue or whatever, or a hospital, and they may not think twice about it. If people think that it will impact their experience of how they approach something that's supposed to be a really fun event, that's the kind of feedback that needs to be considered.
I don't know, is Miss Richardson captain? No? Okay. So I guess just a quick comment for myself regarding the metal detection consideration. Again, probably aligns with a lot of what's been said, but hoping that however the survey is put out, that we are able to capture the voices of anybody who might have fear around these. And I don't know what those questions are going to look like. And I hope that Because I think that's a really important data point. I mean, I know we can say, do they generate it? And we're going to consider it. Similar to, and I'm not meaning to jump to SROs, but I think this point aligns to that if somebody's uncomfortable with an SRO in the building, and I'm talking students at this point, I mean, I hope that voice has more weight, and that fear and that emotion behind it has more weight as we're gathering that data. And I know that's a big ask, but to me, if there's somebody, if that's going to impact our relationship and the relationship of the school with that student somehow in their psyche and their experience of growing up, that we are able to act based on that and not just say, well, it was only a couple of students who voiced that. Because I know that I personally am always going to take action to support those who might feel left behind or might feel in this case, fear about something like that. So I just, that's my heart, but I really feel that that's important, and I hope that we capture that and we consider that, please. Okay, so moving on, Mr. Meyer, your next topic, I'll let you lead, whether it be SROs or phones.
Apology, Chair, for, sorry, not following your instructions the first time.
No, I switched gears on you. I just was trying to keep
that's
it
what I thought,
organized,
but,
so you needed to be flexible, and
I
you
did
did great.
get new hearing aids, so I am hearing better. Cell phones. Okay. I wonder why I mean, what is best for our students? I mean, shouldn't we be caring about learning mental health and their impact on everything and the safety? I guess, why are we even, to me, and this is maybe a comment, but why are we not considering all those things?
So it is a complex topic, and we tried to speak to it in the slides. And if you notice, I was trying to be very scripted tonight to make sure I covered everything that I needed to cover, because there are a lot of facets to this. The reality, if you live in this building day in and day out, is that to enforce to go to the next level, if you will, and not allow students access to their phones during hallway time and lunchtime, it's just a matter of choice. And I think, and I have to credit Beth Chuck because she crafted that slide about what is our goal. If the goal, that when people give their feedback, we are really encouraging folks to say, is my primary concern what's going on in the classroom and learning? Or is it, learning and all the other things? Which, I don't want to say problem, but which problem, what concern or concerns are we aiming to tackle? And just know that if we're aiming to tackle the bigger concern and go with the more stringent, I should say, the more stringent off and away for the entire day, then, and the student representative when it gets around to her, I'd love to hear her comments on this, Maggie's comments, because she's going to know what that's going to look like. And it's a lot more enforcement work for staff, and it could be well worth it. We just need that additional feedback. But we will be taking a lot more phones.
And I think too, I think Maggie will be able to shed a little bit more light on this too, that from the students, and we often have conversations about our students' voice. I believe that this is one thing that students are very divided on. I mean, you hear a lot of students say, hey, we're meeting your expectation of having them off in the classroom. And we know that we've heard from some teachers that it's working better in some classes than others. Generally speaking, the feel is students have, I hate to use the word compliance, but it is more of a compliance model now, where they are coming in and, having the cell phones off in the classroom settings, but the hallways, it's very hard to tackle. And see Ms. Burns shaking her head because she's been in the hallways with us. And so our students, generally speaking, are a little bit more divided, where they're like, we're demonstrating, and can you allow us a little bit more freedom in this area?
I guess I just ask that in the survey you providing also examples of where I think there are multiple districts that have an off and away policy, and correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues, but that we're providing examples that what is the norm kind of out there, if that makes sense, so that people understand if we're asking for something like all day and away, that we're not being exceptional here. And I think we got New York Times coverage on this the other day. So again, I want to make sure I know we're conscious about not trying to tee up one side or the other on different things, but I also want to make sure folks are at least having the opportunity to educate themselves before, again, answering these questions. Thanks.
I think we're back to relationships, if I can say that. I think marked improvement in the classroom we hear, with some kind of intermittent use in some classrooms. But as Dr. Gurley said, I'm shaking my head because I'm here. And what I do see is in the hall and in the cafeteria, and a fair amount of them are arranging pickups and rides and coordinating after school things with family. And there's a lot going on in the background that maybe we should hear from the students about what are they doing during that time and what does that look like, and how do we do that in a way that also, if we're giving a little freedom in that space, how do we then as a system help them self-regulate when they get into the classroom? Are we teaching the importance of that self-regulation model, helping them adjust versus them trying to sneak away to use the phone, sneak away to go to the bathroom? Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. No, you don't. You want to use your phone. But if they know I can sit here, I can have my phone off and away for 90 minutes or a block, whatever day it is, it's enforcing that expectation that we're here right now in class and learning, and you get, because you're about to be an adult entering the real world, we're teaching you some regulation, self-regulation, that you have it during this time. So I am interested to hear what students say, and maybe in turn, it gives the teachers a little bit more power in the classroom to say, when you leave, you have this time. When you go to lunch, you have this time, versus just a complete shut off, which we can find studies for everything, but we know our kids are addicted. And does that then cause anxiety and increased blood pressure? And it does. There are studies on that as well. And so I think just being really mindful of what, again, our student voice is and what they need from us. Thank you.
Mr. Morse?
Yeah, so in the classroom today, I also had a cell phone issue, I guess you could call it. I had two students that were on their cell phone, and it was just a gentle reminder to say, hey, we're here and you have a project to do, and let's get to it. For me, I think it would be a little hard, to be honest with you, to try to monitor the usage of cell phones within the hallways. But I personally see better results in regards to students being present in the classroom and learning environment, but also their mental health as well. And so what I'm trying to say here is, although we're saying the focus is on learning for one option, I do think there are benefits for mental health when not going all in a way all day. I'll leave it there for now. I'll leave it there for now.
Ms. Cooper?
So for me, I would say that first, about the survey, I would be curious to know from previous surveys, what is the percent of folks that are taking the survey? And are we thinking outside of the box of how we capture the information that we're looking for, not only in a survey? Because I can say, as a parent of 3 children that has gone through the Charlottesville City school system, I don't always take those surveys. because life be lifing. And so I just want to say that I hope we're thinking outside of the box when we're getting feedback, because the folks that I think voices that we want to hear are not probably the folks that are taking the surveys. Also, I agree with having whether it's cell phone zones or giving folks the opportunity to use their cell phones in the hall and lunch. And here's why. The kids are in high school, are becoming adults, right? And we need to teach them healthy habits and also responsibility of like using your cell phone. So we may want the phones off and away in class, but it should be spaces where they are able to use their cell phone. Because if we're talking about our strategic plan and the portrait of a student, right? We want to set our children up for success, right? And so when they go off to college, we want to set the expectation that in the classroom, when you're going to learn, or on the job, when you're working, you may have your phone away, but when you're on your break or when you're in your dorm, then you can use those phones. And so teaching those healthy habits and providing those spaces for flexibility, I think you would yield more results.
Thank you. Ms. Dooley?
Well, here we are again, talking about cell phones for I think the third year in a row. I'm thrilled there's success at Buford. In theory, this should be some of the hardest times with cell phones. As these students matriculate, it should get easier. However, I have really grave concerns about what happens when students get to CHS, because it seems like this building has a very hard time for a lot of different reasons. I think there's not agreement amongst the teaching staff about how to approach cell phones. And then just as students are older and have, in some cases, bigger attitudes and bigger responses to being told to put their cell phones away, we just have more trouble. I want cell phones gone. I want them off and away all day, bring the pouches on, let's get rid of them. I think for the learning environment, but then, if we allow them in the hallways and at lunch, I think it just like funnels all of that cell phone energy into these smaller moments. And so these times when students could be interacting and engaging with each other, they're going to be even, driven more to be on their phone. And so I'm not convinced yet of the rationale behind allowing them to have cell phone zones, et cetera. All that said, I don't know how we do this mid-year. There's so much, process and systems that need to be in place about beefing up our staff's ability to communicate transportation and plan changes to students that we are not equipped to do right now. I think, with some of the other issues that we've seen this year, I feel like the pendulum has to swing back a little bit too far, maybe, to completely do away with them, to reset a culture around phone use before we can then potentially look at opening things up again. So I'm on one end of the spectrum. I respect that. I appreciate hearing fellow board members' comments. Some of the comments that we've heard from parents and students about safety and wanting their children to have phones in moments of an emergency, I also really strongly disagree with that. I think in a crisis, I don't want a kid on a phone. I want them listening to the instructions from a trained staff member. I think my fear is around students, texting with parents, misinformation spreading. I think that results in a whole lot more harm than it does benefit. So I guess I'll conclude, like, all of these issues, the surveys make me a little bit nervous because I think it's going to be similar to our school board inbox and conversations, that there's not going to be any sort of consistency. And so we are going to once again be tasked with doing the job that we were elected to do, which is make a hard decision when there's not consensus. So I think we just all need to be prepared for that on each of these three topics.
Thank you. Ms. Heaphy?
All right.
Drum
No
roll.
pressure, I guess. Yeah, so this is not a new topic for any of us, but especially not for the students. From my perspective, this year has been different. I don't want, everyone to be under the impression that it's not working, that it's not being enforced. I mean, changes are being made. And yeah, like Dr. Gurley said, people feel how they feel about it, and that's inevitable. However, I was gonna tell you guys a little story. Um, earlier this year, one of my friends had a personal issue going on in her family. She came to school late. She arrived, she went to like probably one class period and then went straight to the bathroom and had a mental breakdown. I, at that time, was in a class that I had finished all my assignments. My teacher was okay with us being on our phones. I saw the text that she said, "I need help. Please come now." I went there. I stepped out of the room. I helped her. I gave her a hug, and it was better. I cannot imagine her standing there alone, having a panic attack, alone in the bathroom, with no friend there, no one to support her. There are some classes, some teachers that enforce this a lot more than others. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I want to point out is that the teachers know the learning style of their students and the material better than anyone. I don't see a problem with having them make the decisions of what's best for their learning environments and in their classrooms. Some teachers, it's often away the entire time. If they see it, they'll say once, put it away. If they see it a second time, Miss Bryant is called. There's some teachers that, if you do your stuff, then you're free to do what you have to do. That makes sense to me personally as a student because, again, they know what they're teaching. They know the material. They know their kids. And having this kind of one general consensus, I think, can be hard just because people are always going to disagree and people are going to approach it differently. I don't have to say this. School now is changing. Learning is changing literally every day by the second. There's so many examples of phones being needed to do schoolwork. Whether that is journalism, the newspaper class that I'm in, whether that is for other reasons, it's not all. I just don't want the impression to be that when kids are on their phones, they're scrolling mindlessly through TikTok. Like there are whether it's for communication, whether it's for actual schoolwork, there are moments when having a phone is important because that's the world we live in. I'm not trying to age shame anyone here because it's new to me too. But yeah, I just want to make that clear. Like Ms. Cooper said, we are myself as a senior, there are 18-year-olds in this building. And I know for a fact there are 18-year-olds that pretty much take care of themselves and they come to school and are being told put your phone away. That's harder for some people to hear more than others. And so as we grow, get older, get a college or the workforce or whatever we're doing after high school, I think navigating our habits ourselves and controlling that, learning how to do that ourselves is effective. So I know that was a lot, but I hope that made sense.
Thank you again for your perspective and everybody's perspective. I just quickly, I won't talk too much about this, but there have been years of, as Ms. Dooley said, discussion around this. There has been a lot of hours logged and minutes logged by a committee, a cell phone committee that led us to our current policy. The current policy, which has not been implemented to fidelity. So there were questions and concerns when the policy was put in place as to whether or not we could sustain it. And there was a lot of conversation with individuals in the buildings, and we knew this was going to be challenging. So I think the reality is we haven't seen the current policy implemented. So if we're all willing to say it was a failure, and to just ignore all of the research that is out there surrounding mental health for students, then we're going to have a lot of conversation about that. I would like to ask that the research and the articles that committee members used throughout our work are included, or linked in that survey so that everybody can educate themselves, please. Because there is a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of research out there. We don't need to recreate this, it's there. So I'll leave that at that for now. All right, next, Mr. Meyer. if you have any questions or comments
I think
about
if the topic is on the
the
youth resource
resource.
officer, I already asked my question. Thank you.
Okay,
But Chair, I would like to come back after everybody gets done. Thanks.
go ahead.
I think the only comment I would have is the need for education. Really helping folks understand the difference between a youth and family service model versus an SRO, and really putting forth the Cambridge model, allowing the community to really understand what that is before making a decision. I think echo Mr. Meyer's statement that immediate response is you're putting police officers back in the school. That's not what the Cambridge model is. And so I'm hoping that there's significant education on that. And again, I think it goes back to relationships. The people that do those jobs are people who have a heart and a passion for children and youth and families in our community. And we're seeing some of that work being done right now, having a new police chief in our community and the work that he is doing along with his team. We do have police officers that attend our sporting events and have relationships with our students just at that initial stop and greet and talk and have interactions. And so I think, again, just important that we recognize truly what that model is as we're asking people to make decisions and comment about it. Thank you.
I just have a couple comments. One, I'll kind of second and echo. I'm looking forward to the education as the administration seeks that out. Hopefully the board gets that information as well. Secondly, I would just like to make a comment about my personal experience. I infrequently pull out my black card, but I'm pulling out my black card in this moment. As a Black male in the city of Charlottesville, and as a person that went through this school system, and particularly the school building, while we had SROs, I personally had great relationships with the SROs here. I personally know peers and former classmates that had great relationships with the SROs when they were here. To this day, when I see one SRO in particular, we still talk. We live in the same neighborhood. He works downtown. I see him quite often. It is a great relationship. I think it's important to know the best way to solve the divide socially is to make sure that we have relationships early.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cooper?
I know we talked about the Cambridge model, and I was kind of looking at their school board website and stuff like that, but I would like to learn more, and if it's possible to have a meeting with them or even visit to kind of see what that looks like.
Thank you. Ms. Dooley? Ms. Egan? Yeah, I guess my only comment around this would be, and we kind of danced around it a little bit, but the consistent theme or challenge since we changed our model was the communication piece, right? We lost the communication,
That's
the
part of
immediate
it.
community. Yeah,
it's
it
part
is
of it.
part of it.
Just
But I mean, when we look at what's being kind of presented here, and I guess I had a question, and we stay on one of these slides that the youth resource officers potentially would not be based full-time in schools. But then a benefit of having them present would address some of the challenges of coordination. I just think there's got to be a way that we can bridge that communication piece, that I don't understand why we can't have a radio in the building where we can say, we need you, CPD, now. And why it takes having a police person in the building. I mean, that's, I don't know. Am I wrong? I mean,
It's
I
more than
feel
just the
like,
radio. So the radio systems are governed by the FCC and and who
I
can be on
know.
what channels. And then there's another aspect to it as well that just has to do with the difference between communications between people who are of the same department and speak the same language and the efficiencies that are inherent with that versus crossing agencies and communications in certain situations.
Ms.
And-
Powell, I so respect all the, the work that we have done with this model. And I know it's not as easy as me just saying there's got to be a way,
It's
but
way more than
I know, and I
communications.
know you've worked really, really hard on that and the team has, but it just seems to me that, I mean, if we're using this for that reason solely, and and I'm not saying that that's what you're saying,
Using
as far as the using or consideration of this, the Cambridge model of bringing a youth resource officer in, to bridge that gap and to allow us to have that communication piece. I mean, I don't know that that's enough for me personally. I'm just saying that. And I lost my other thought. So I guess that just means I need to be quiet at this point. But we appreciate you and the work that you've done. And was there one more question down here?
Chair, not a question, but I mean, well, question maybe to my colleagues here. Not on the youth resource officer, but in relation related to the weapons detectors. And we've already done a round of feedback, again, from at least a month ago. We got a lot of feedback from folks. Are we ready to make a decision on this? Or because surveying the community again on this, it feels like we already got surveyed. And I guess my question to everybody else is, do you have a mind already made, or do you already need more information?
We're gonna need more. That's what we're doing. We're asking Dr. Gurley and his team to put out a survey to make sure that I think we get all equitable voices, that we didn't just get who attended one town hall or who attended one here. Like, that's my understanding. We want to make sure that we truly do have an opportunity to hear from our students, hear from our staff, hear from the stakeholders, again, in a way that I hope we can hear more and aggregate data given what we have. That would be my sense. And I'm certainly not ready to make any decision. No.
Just on weapons. Okay, that's what I'm just, okay. Because sorry, colleagues. Okay.
Good.
Before we move on out of the conversation about our safety model, I just want to say that we have always implemented a caring culture here. And so and I do have a lot of admiration for Mr. Hartline, because he comes here month after month, and we do have a lot of discussions and just processing. And so one of the statements, I just want to make sure that I clarify one of the statements that he made this evening, because when we lost Mr. Smith, I had just had a conversation with him the day before, because I was surprised to see him. And so the day of his passing, a lot of people were deeply impacted by that. We absolutely did not post his job. There were already three positions for CSAs vacant on that day. So I just want to, I have a lot of respect for you. I appreciate the feedback in this room today, but we absolutely did not post his job on that day. And there was even just a lot of conversation because we were in the midst of getting ready to interview people about taking that down. So I just want to clarify that we did not do that.
All right, thank you. All right, are we done with the safety model?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. Next, we will have Ms. Lewis to bring us an update on the principal search.
Good evening, Chair Torres, members of the board, Dr. Gurley. This evening, I will share an update about the CHS principal search. Next slide. Mindful to keep the strategic plan goals in the forefront, the principal search envelops priority 1 and 2. The CHS principal will foster a strong sense of community, promote a safe and positive environment, and be an integral part to the recruitment and retention. Slide 3. When considering the placement of the CHS principal, we reflected on why good leadership matters and why good leadership is important. And the Wallace Foundation, a nonprofit organization that aims to foster equity and improvement in the learning and enrichment of young people, concluded that the impact of an effective principal is even greater than previously stated. Research found that principals impact learning and attendance, factors supporting student growth and success, and teacher satisfaction and retention, factors supporting teacher success. An effective principal creates an environment in which students and staff can thrive. So we're looking for an effective principal, a collaborator, a strong educator, a system thinker. An effective principal understands strategic management and optimizes how resources are used and allocated. And an effective principal brings an equity lens to the work. CHS needs a principal who is versatile, flexible, and someone who connects with the staff, students, parents, and the Charlottesville community at large. We seek someone who will inspire us to be what we can be. Next slide. 43 individuals have applied for the CHS principal position, and 17 of them are in-state applicants and 26 are out-state applicants. 51% of them, or 22 applicants, are currently principals or have principal experience. 21 or non-applicants are have assistant principal experience. Next slide. Careful to include staff and community voices in the CHS principal search process, we surveyed the community. On January 31st, the division received 189 responses, which included 51 staff members, 87 parents, 47 future parents, and 38 community partners, plus 22 students. Next slide. The survey asked participants to identify the top 3 leadership skills described that they wanted for their CHS principal, and based on the results, the top 3 important characteristics are: maintain a good school climate, promote high expectations, and someone that communicates well and has effective interpersonal skills. Next slide. When the survey participants were asked to consider what was extremely important in the qualities of a principal, they want someone who has successful high school principal experience, someone with experience working with a culturally diverse population, someone that understands the unique strengths and challenges that come with being in Charlottesville, Virginia. Survey participants want a principal who can hire, evaluate, and develop the staff. Next slide. When coding all the questions presented to the participants, several themes emerged, and we were able to use these themes to generate interview questions. Some evidence themes that are mentioned here are student engagement and attendance, community building, communication and transparency, and equity. Next slide. So this outlines the process for selecting the CHS principal, which is underway. In January, we reviewed the diverse pool of applicants. In February, we will select interview days, identify an interview committee, and contact applicants, inviting them to interview. We will conduct interviews this month, and the interview panel will be diverse, including CHS teachers, parents, and division leaders. And we will have 2 rounds of interviews with the goal of presenting to you a principal on March 29th. I'll take any questions at this time.
We'll start down here. Ms. Heapy? No. Ms. Dooley, Ms. Cooper? Mr. Morse?
Actually, can you come back to me? Is that okay?
I can do that. Ms. Burns?
Ms. Lewis, thank you for presenting tonight. Question is about student voice. How will we ensure that our student voice is heard? I see, unfortunately, not many replies in the survey, which I think speaks to Ms. Cooper and how we capture voices. And just if you could help me understand how we make sure that our students are heard and just if they could be a part of that process.
Okay.
So as a part of the process, the second round of interviews, our students will be included in the second round, and that's a different approach that we will take this time. So we will have at least 5 students that will be a part of it, and we've already internally we've identified, and then who those students will be, and then we will communicate that out as we are now starting to, we've secured the dates, the location, so we want to make sure that we can get our students to also save the dates.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Morris? you're
All
back up.
right. So I guess I'll approach it this way. One of the top interview questions or themes for interview questions is student engagement. As far as I'm aware of and what I've heard so far through from the community and specifically CHS, student activities were really, really high in the most recent, can you remind me what they referred it to? It was Black Night Time, during the Black Night Time, was really high. And I know that some teachers have requested additional funds for that. What I really, really recall was during the COOP event, and we had our teacher panel, and they were asked a question, something to the effect of, if you had unlimited money or if you had a magic wand, what would you ask for? And most of them spoke about the student experience and having additional projects and being able to really engage the students. So really, I'm just making more of a comment that I hope that we take the interview question seriously in regards to student engagement. I understand that attendance is important, but I think there's a deeper level that we need to go to. And then whoever the principal is, that we support them as they try to make those changes holistically.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last chance. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So Dr. Gurley will now come to the podium and present the proposed 2024-2025 budget.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, all of our community members, parents assembled this evening. Tonight, I will present to you the superintendent's proposed budget, some of which you will hear this evening. We've talked about in work sessions and community budget sessions. And so what I would just ask you to do is feel free as I go through the presentation, if you have your questions. It probably would be easier to address them in that moment, and then we don't have to do one culminating activity at the end. Next slide, please. We've used this visual throughout our work sessions and our community engagement. And what I want to draw everyone's attention to is the bottom. Those were the budget priorities that have been generated through a lot of our engagement. I do want to remind people that a survey did go out. And so overwhelmingly people, that survey that went out to our community members, people wanted our new strategic plan to drive our budget initiatives. So at the bottom, you will see student achievement, which consists of literacy, intervention, academic learning, learning pathways through K-Tech, safety and security, which we've had a lot of conversation about this evening, our compensation and benefits for our staff, and the modernization of our buildings. Next slide, please. And so I will have a discussion with you about our demographics and enrollment. And I think that as people are listening to our conversations, just to keep in mind how our enrollment does impact how we budget our money. Next slide, please. So this table shows on the left-hand side of this table, oh, did I skip a slide? Oh, I'm sorry. This table shows our enrollment projection of regular education classrooms. And so when we use the when I use the terminology regular education classrooms, these are classrooms where 50% or more of the time or less than the time are spent with out special education services. So our general education classes are 50% or less not receiving special education services. What you'll see is how we project our enrollment to increase by our schools here. One thing that one of the things that we've been talking about really is how our enrollment projects our class sizes. And so we're going to spend on the next couple of slides, we will do some talking about how our class sizes impact, how our enrollment impacts our class sizes, how our class size initiative impacts how we project the number of classrooms. So what you'll see is we'll have conversations with regards to Venable, we'll have conversations with regards to Jackson Via, and then also how we support this at the secondary level with regards to our English and social studies classrooms. Next slide, please. I know recently there's been some discussion we saw in the news. There was discussion about birth rates and how schools are impacted by birth rates. And one thing that we will say here in Charlottesville, that has not been the center of our conversations. Our conversations have been centered around our English language learner population has been increasing. You will see that outlined in some of our slides and in our upcoming slides that our English language learner population really impacts how many classes we will need in a given year. In this slide, you'll see some what we refer to as gray areas. And those gray areas are when you look at Burnley Moran, there's a class at 4th grade right now that has there are 2 teachers for 4th grade. Generally speaking, you typically see in Charlottesville about 3 classes per grade level. Here, this is a low year for them. So I'm referring to it as a gray area because we will determine what that looks like for next year, and we will make some modifications as needed. Again, the VDOE has the K through 3 class sizes. And so sometimes, depending on the school, it may range from 19 students in a class, or some schools it may be 24 in a class. I think as you keep in mind that as you're thinking about the bigger picture here, some of the things that are impacting our enrollment, housing, again, it's the increase in our ELS population. Some of our neighborhood schools don't have new housing developments, some do. And so we will continuously have to have conversations with our city partners just so that we can keep track. And Ms. Powell has been attending those meetings for us. We've reinitiated that process of just having conversations about what enrollment looks like. Let's do our next slide, please. So here's a look from 2003 to 2023 with regards to how our data shapes up by race. And so if you notice that in 2003, we had a larger population of students who were reported as Black in Charlottesville City Schools. Looking at the data for 2023, you'll see that that number has decreased significantly by about 20 percentage points. There are some things that have factored into that over time, how we report race. We've had some conversations during our work session with regards to how housing has impacted our families of color, particularly our Black families. And so with all of these things said, there are other races and ethnicities that are factored into our schools now. We still remain a very diverse school division, and I think we've heard a little bit of that today. Next slide, please. So this is our data which spans from 2003 to 2023, which looks at our economically disadvantaged data. This data is important because how we provide supports in our schools. And so a lot of times when we're talking about subgroup data, one of those areas are our students who are economically disadvantaged. We get that information based on data that's sent to us from our families who participate in some of our government assistance programs, such as SNAP and TANF. What you'll see is that even in 2023, the top bubble shows by your race and what percentage you make up of economically disadvantaged. That lower box says of that particular demographic, what percentage of that group is economically disadvantaged. And what we know is in 2023, of our Black students, there was a high percentage, the highest percentage of economically disadvantaged. And now, as you look at 2023, while our students, while only 44% of our Black students make up our economically disadvantaged, what you'll see is that of that group, 86% of those students are economically disadvantaged, which is telling about the about the need. And so overall, we do have about 54% of our students who are reported as economically disadvantaged. Next slide. So I had just a brief conversation earlier in this presentation about our projection as it relates to our EL population, our English learner population. If you take a look back at the fall of 2020, you will see that the actual was 467 students who were enrolled in Charlottesville City Schools as an student who receives English language learner services. If you take a look at the snapshot that we had back in the fall of 2023, which we just left, that number was 700. So you see that the number is ticking up. And then the winter of 2024, which is right now, correct? Which is the winter. I know I always get confused because in college, this is the spring semester. So in the winter of 24, which is right now, so since the fall, we've even gone up 47 students. And I believe we've used the slide where we are projecting that in 25, it'll be upwards of like 800 plus students in the fall of 2025. So the number, the trajectory is going up. We are a place, we are inclusive, we welcome all, but the conversations that we will have this evening is that as we talk about our students who need English language learner services, as those students come in, there are essentially a 2-for-1. They require our general education teachers, but they also require English as a second language supports, which is an additional teacher. So there are two things in which we're impacted as we receive our new EL students. Next slide. When you look at this next slide, it just breaks down for you our ratios of how many students are receiving EL services at each one of our schools and how many teachers are serving them in that bottom line at the top. If you look at the bottom, you'll see that we try to keep our ratios to 30-1. I will tell you that the state ratio is 50-1. They say you can provide quality services at 50-1. We know that that is absolutely not true. We know that it is a heavy lift on our teachers. As you have seen in some of our teachers of the year today, you saw a lot of our EL teachers represented and as our finalists, our winners today. And so there's a lot of work that goes into providing EL services. And so I would dare say that if you ask the EL department, they would probably want the ratio to be even lower than 30. But keeping in mind that even at lowering the ratio, it comes at a cost, which we will continue to advocate for whatever is needed for our students. And so in this moment, it is 30-1. We do have a star up there beside with Venable. That's because we did add a position because the numbers did tick up there at Venable. That position wasn't funded at the time because it was based on student need. We made it a work. And so that's something that we have to prioritize for our upcoming budget.
And
next slide.
Dr. Gurley, may I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
When you said we made it work, could you give a little bit of description of what that meant?
Absolutely. So at that moment when we needed that additional halftime teacher, we have to look at what resources do we have available. And so one of the things when we come back to have conversations about where can we secure funds from, we look at, were there vacant positions? Did someone leave throughout the year? Is there enough funds to cover from a vacant position? So that we can make this work for our students. So that's typically how we work through how we add resources. In some other cases, are there grants that are available where we may be able to work from? But in this case, there was vacancy savings.
Dr. Gurley?
Yes.
If I could just talk about your English language learner enrollment change slide for a moment.
Slide 9.
Yeah, I think what's important to note here is where we see spring 2021, fall 2021.
Next slide. One more.
Sorry.
No, you're going the wrong way.
Other way. Slide 8.
Keep going. Keep going.
There we go. Yeah. Thank you. So where we see spring 2021, fall 2021, that's where we see a shift. And this is for public knowledge as well. Like that's where we see the Trump administration change and the Biden administration change from where the original administration in 2021, first part of that year, they had only committed to 15,000 refugees coming into the country. And President Biden kept that in place for the first 3 months of his term and then made a shift to changing that to 62,500 refugees allowed into the country. And now we're at 125,000 refugees into the country. And so I think it's important for people to understand that this isn't just a shift in Charlottesville. This is a shift really throughout our country, and that having the IRC here and doing the great work that they do allows those families to come here. And that's where we're seeing some of that shift. This isn't just because we as Charlottesville opened the door and said, everyone come on in. This is a federal policy change. And so us as a locality, that's where we're seeing the effect of federal policy change. And that, as community members and constituents, just really important to understand the implications of that when we do open our borders and welcome people in, the effect of that, not just is welcoming them in, but as you're pointing out, all the other things that come along with that in our community. And here we are seeing it, and I think you're right on track. We'll continue to see that grow as we have another year of the administration, and who knows what happens next. But just understanding that that's a huge number. It's a lot of people, and what
Yes,
our
ma'am.
community looks like. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And I think, and I don't want to glaze over what I said earlier, that, I know that there are conversations nationwide about birth rates, but as we see here, I mean, even with the reports of birth rates declining, we are still getting new students in. So our enrollment continues to tick up. All right, did I do this slide? No. So I've talked about this on the last slide, but we do 50-1. I'm sorry, the state does 50-1, but we try to keep ours around the 30-1. We do project 109 students for the 24-25 school year. So next year, right now, the projection is 109 more, and that's 109 more in addition to the 747 that we are currently currently are at the winter of 2024. And so the fall of 2023, the increase of 47 students. And so we are having to add FTEs so that we can meet the needs, of our students. Next slide. So the next few slides, we'll have some conversations about revenues, expenditures, changes, our changes in the budget, and then I will provide you with a summary. Next slide, please. So you will see here in blue that the largest portion of our revenue comes from the city at 63%. And that is our primary source for our operations. And then you see our state revenue there, and we will have conversations in the upcoming slides about how we've been impacted by the state revenue. You will also see there's a gray box that says federal, and that really talks about some of our grant programs that we have here. You can go on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to have a conversation about our LCI, which is our local composite index, which did increase. The local composite index is updated on the odd number year. So the local composite index was updated in 2023, which goes into effect for the 24 through 26 school year. There is a lag between the data elements. So right now, we are being impacted based on data from 2021. And if you remember, in 2021, we were everywhere in the Commonwealth, everywhere, I probably would say around the nation, the numbers of students in schools were down during that time. And so when we talk about the LCI, the local composite index, that's really about a school division's ability to pay. So what this table says here, when it says, so it says biennium period 2024 to 2026, based on the year 2021, that local composite index is 0.77. That is, we should be able to pay 77% of the expenses as it relates to the local composite index. But remember that that's based on a number of students from back in 2021. And what we know is true right now, that if you just look at the number of students who require English language learner services and the number of students we have here, we've increased significantly. What else do I need to say here? I think that we're good in this area. So I think we're good in this area. All right, next slide. So when we talk about state revenue, we presented, as presented to the board on the 4th of January, Our local composite index increased by 7.5%. We did receive the calc tool the day before. When we talk about revenues, revenues like SOQ funded positions, we did have a decrease in about 1.2. We did have a decrease in about $1.2 million. And so when we talk about revenues, these are programs that are not required by law, but are intended to be target resources for students. So these are things like things that programs we had during COVID, the grocery sales tax, those hold harmless things. And so we did see that those revenues were eliminated in the calc tool when we were calculating what our ability to pay is. Next slide. So the governor's budget had some technical adjustments based on our LCI and our ADM, our average daily membership. The estimate projects on our sales tax, and it is up to date. The governor's budget proposes a one-time bonus, which does not go towards your creditable compensation. So it does propose a one-time bonus for instructional and support staff for the fiscal year 2025, which is our school year 24-25. And then the next fiscal year, which is 2026, it has a salary increase of 2% for our SOQ positions, and those are standard of quality positions. Next slide. When we talk about our, as we continue to talk about our revenue, the city's support is essential for our operation and the maintenance of our schools. It is a significant portion of our budget, and due to our high LCI, this slide right here shows you our trend over 10 years, and how the city has contributed to our schools. And so that bar that's red sometimes and orange on some screens, it's red there and orange there. That bar shows the actual increase above what was actually received. So if you look at fiscal year 19 and 20 in this slide, you will see that pre-pandemic, the city's contribution was more than 40% of the new personal and real estate tax. Next slide. Yes.
Dr. Gurley, related to this, when the city has a surplus and brings in more real property and personal property taxes than it budgeted at the start of the year, is that counted in our allocation, or do we get any of that?
I don't believe so. I will look to Ms. Hoover, but I'm sure the answer is no.
I think I just reported at their budget meeting yesterday that they have a surplus of, I think, extra $6 million this year. So we're not going to see 40% of that extra $6.6 million.
I don't think so. I'll look to Ms. Hoover, but I'm certain the answer is no. All right. And so next slide. And I didn't say, you don't have to go back, but the 5-year trend for schools, and that was on the slide, the 5-year trend for school contributions increased in range from 2.7 million to 4.2 million. Now on this slide, you will see our expenditures per category. And so like every school division, we are a people business. The bulk of our money is spent in salaries and wages and benefits. I mean, we have to pay people in order to work for us. And so you will see there that that is represented by 75% of our overall expenditures. It's roughly $80 million salaries, wages and benefits. And then next in line are our contract services. And that refers to our maintenance and transportation, which are in our contract services category. And these contracts total about $8.4 million, which is roughly 8% of our expenditures. Next slide. I think this slide is, there's so many slides that are vitally important to the conversation. But when we talk about SOQ, this is what the state says you need in order to run your school division. And what you'll see is what we actually have. And I will say that this is true of every school, that it takes much more than what the standards of quality say. So you'll see in that first column, it says that we need a total of 326.45 people in order to run our schools. And you'll see that we have 539 people in order to successfully make this happen right now. And so I think that that's very important, because a lot of times in conversations, people are like, well, what's required? And sometimes what's required is only the bare minimum. And in order to give students what they need, you have to exceed the minimum. And so I think and so if you look, I don't want to glaze over this. I want to make sure I say this. So if you look at what it costs, so we spend about $25.8 million above what the state gives us to fund those positions. So we get the 4 million of the $4.7 million. And so we are spending about $25.8 million more than what we actually receive. Next slide.
Dr. Gurley?
Yes,
Real
ma'am.
quick, please, sir. So along the lines, and I agree with you that this slide is so important. And yeah, we're not the only division who employs more than what the state says we need. But I think more than anything, this community, Charlottesville community, and this is who we are, has prioritized and valued, every single employee has valued small class sizes, the community elementary schools. And this is where we see that impact. And this is where the board has worked and the school administration team has worked for years to make this happen and to listen to what's important to this community. So along the lines of this is where we're at. And as you move further into your presentation, and as you've already alluded to, just the increased enrollment, for ELL's student or population of new community members coming in, and what we had hoped to see, and again, not meaning to steal your thunder, but was, student based. I mean, this was based on enrollment and what we need to maintain the wonderful programming and education that we in Charlottesville City Schools provide. So this is so key. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. On our next slide, as we had conversations this evening about our safety model and just people in general, and we've heard time and time again in these conversations about how important relationships are. And so one of those, a few of those relationships are some of the positions you see here on the slide. When we talk about those licensed and unlicensed positions, such as nurses, school social workers, psychologists, licensed behavior analysts, licensed assistant behavior analysts. When we look at those positions and what's required by the state and why we exceed in that area, we exceed in this area because we feel like relationships matter in order to support our safety model, to support the mental wellness of our students. So you'll see that the state only funds 12 positions based on our enrollment of 4,300 students. And so here we exceed that standard by 24 and a half positions. And I think that just as Ms. Torres just said, we are continuing to prioritize the well-being of our students, the well-being of our staff, and even our families. And we know that in order to accomplish this, that these positions are vitally important to accomplish that. Next slide. So also, as we have this conversation, we're looking at compensation. And so what you'll see on this slide, is our raise effective January the 1st of this year, because we gave the 2% raise. We gave the 2% raise. And as a result, what happened to our salary scale is that now step 0 makes it starts at $55,029. And or if you want to look at it in terms of hourly rate, that's $39.31. And we did this a little differently this school year, because I think a lot of times we have these conversations about compensation, and sometimes it looks like some school divisions are paying maybe $5 more in this contract and over here, or they may pay $10 more over here in terms of the overall salary. So we said, let's not also just include salary. Let's look at what the hourly rate is, and let's look at how many hours the employees are required to work. So we show the hourly rate of for our teachers that there's a 200-day contract, and we require our teachers to work 1,400 hours over the course of that contract. And so this is a key piece of information as we compare the salaries to others. I think one of the first things Mr. Meyer, he mentioned, like, what does that mean in terms of other school divisions? And so we were like, well, let's look at what that looks like in terms of other localities. So when you look at someone like in Arlington, the starting pay is $55,976, which, yes, that's more than our salary is here in Charlottesville. It's actually $947 more. But they have a 200-day contract. But Arlington requires teachers to teach 1,500 hours. So when you look at that, that calculates to an hourly rate of $37.32, which is actually less than the hourly rate. We're paying a higher hourly rate because we require our teachers to work 1,400 hours. We have a 7-hour, and I want to make sure I translate that. That's a 7-hour contract day here in Charlottesville. And so if we looked at what Arlington's salary would be if it was a 1,400, if the contract hours were 1,400 like ours, that means that their starting salary would be $52,000 and $52,248. And the same goes for Albemarle. Albemarle, their contract hours are 1,450 hours over the course of the 200 days. So that means when you look at their salaries, if you would compare it to ours with the 1,400, that would move their salaries to $53,662. So that $1,400 hours over the course of the contract is a big variable there, with us only requiring 7 hours. Next slide. If you, for our returning board members, you will remember that we went through a compensation study. For our new board members, we went through a compensation study. And so there were some recommendations from that compensation study. To put in perspective what we had a lot of discussion about during that time is that we currently have 48 pay tables across our administration and support staff. There are 48 pay tables just across that. So that means anytime someone new comes, we are flipping through a book or flipping through an Excel sheet to look through one of the 48 tabs to determine someone's salary. What Evergreen suggested was create a pay table where you are putting all of these people on one thing. And I should say it's two. There's a administrative pay table. And so that would include your APs, coordinators, principals, supervisors, chiefs. They would all go on a pay table. That's one. And then you would have a support pay table. Is that what it's called? I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. A general pay table, I'm sorry. You have a general pay table, which would include our other positions such as administrative technicians, secretary, custodians, instructional assistants, and nutrition workers. So instead of each one of them having their own table, they're now on one unified pay table. The pros of doing this not only just helps us in terms of the efficiency of time, but what it also does is it helps to address some compression. As it stands currently, there's a 1% of compression with the custodians, instructional assistants, and nutrition workers. By moving them, this allows us to align them with their hourly rate, and it, just allows them to be brought up with the market rate. And so we do feel like this would be a good opportunity to address the concerns in that area, because we know that in terms of, if you look on our website, we've had, in some form or fashion, we've had some vacancies as it relates to IAs. By doing this brings the IA pay up. It allows it to be with market. It addressed the compression that some of our staff members are already feeling. And I think it's just the right thing to do for our employees. Now, what this doesn't do, we don't have to address anything with our teachers with the unified pay table, because for the most part, our teacher scale, we don't have 48 scales for our teachers. We do have some versions of our scales based on if a person is 200, which the bulk of our teachers are 200, but then we do have some people who have a 210, whether they're some type of department lead or whether they're a specialist, they may have a 220 scale. So we don't have to do anything, because yearly we come to you and we have conversations about the teacher pay scale. So our next slide, which will be a little colorful. Back at the beginning of January, we had a conversation, we had a work session, and we presented our budget based on some needs. We started building a budget based on some needs. And it was a budget that consisted of about $12 million in ask. At one of our sessions, work sessions, it may have been at that work session, you all said, like, let's not wipe this slate clean. Let's see the progression of, like, you had all of these things and where did these things land? So what we did, we decided to color code this table for you. So this is how it was presented to you, plus some things. So the pink area are things that had some changes to it. The yellow areas are the areas where we had to remove items, because after we had conversations with the city, we learned that we wouldn't be getting 12 million, we would be getting $6 million. And so the yellow area are the things that we needed to remove. And then the red are areas where we added items. So one of the things that we are prioritizing, we have to move the raise that we gave our staff. We have to build that into our next budget. We want to ensure that we can address our teachers. So I spoke to you about the 1% bonus. We feel that it would be a better service to our employees to give them a step, to do a step increase rather than the one-time bonus. And we want to do that because the step gives them credible compensation towards their VRS. This is, in the long run, I think most of our teachers would benefit from knowing that they got their step versus a one-time bonus that, and when I say the step is an average of 1.25 versus the 1% bonus, and that's going towards that credible compensation. So we decided there that we want to do the step versus the bonus. And then the other area in red here, we wanted to implement the evergreen pay bands for our administration, for the administrative pay table and the general pay table. And this will, again, I think the most important thing here is this addresses that compression that some of our most valuable workers here, our support staff, this addresses that compression for them. Also here, you know, the white areas are areas where we just had no change. So if you see nothing in a box, no color, then that means nothing happened different in that area. So the city contracts are still there. And then we had a larger amount down there for K-Tech. And then so after we reran that data, and we've since had our meetings with Albemarle and their contributions. So we were able to lower that amount there to 290,000. So that is a change on this slide. Any questions on this slide before I move forward? All right, I'll move on. This next slide, there are a lot of yellow areas. And I want to remind you that yellow means that these are things that we are not moving forward from our initial conversation. Now, I don't want to scare you totally, because you will see some areas that we have figured out, we are figuring out how to make it work. So let me say, for example, night school. You see that night school, the night school is there. While it's showing that we are removing that there, we are figuring ways to make that work in terms of, we know night school needs to happen. So it looks like it's being eliminated totally, totally from here. We are going to use other funds in order to make this happen.
Can you speak please to just describe what that amount was going for, or how, I mean, was that staffing?
Absolutely. So, for example, the night school, the $213,000, that's staffing, that's programs, that's resources, all the things that the staff over at the night school program tap into. That's what it will take to run that program next school year. And so the night school, I want to make sure that I'm very clear. We are not cutting the program. We are not cutting the resources. We just need to find an alternative method to make it happen, and we will.
But correct me if I'm wrong, these would be reoccurring funds that we're going to need, correct? So.
Oh, absolutely.
So what we're doing is finding one-time funding source to kind of, again, recreate a thermometer, so to speak.
Yes.
I mean, if we add all of these things together, that we're going to be creative and work really hard to find funding for some of these things. That's basically what we're doing.
Yes, ma'am. And so I think, you know, when we get into, and you'll see this in the upcoming slides, I think when we talk about what needs to happen, we were given $6 million, and from that $6 million, $3 million comes off the top because of the shortfall from the LCI. And then the remaining $3 million, we want to prioritize our staff compensation. And we know that we have to move the $2 million into the next budget from the raise that we gave in the month of January. So we have to do that. And then we want to make sure that our staff members, we don't freeze them on a step. So we want to make sure that they get their step, and we want to make sure that we are addressing the compression so that we can remain the employer of choice for our support positions.
I mean, as you've alluded to, I mean, look at all that yellow. I mean, honestly, I'm a little nauseated looking at it. Because, you know, in previous years and in previous, just previous years, different funding situations, whatever, you know, I mean, we might have been presented with a budget that was looking to add programs or different things, but that's really not what this is about. You know, and we know that. I mean, you've made it very clear. We talked a little bit just a minute ago about night school. I mean, first thing on this yellow list is a special education person at K-Tech. And we know historically, and I mean, maybe we're gonna figure out a way to make it work, but up until now, what I've heard, being on that board is that our students over there with special education needs have not had the supports just based on the relationship of how K-Tech was.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, we could go through all of these, I'm sure, and just be really concerned, more than really concerned.
Absolutely. And I want to make sure that I acknowledge that I'm surrounded by a lot of incredible and amazing people, whether it be our executive leadership team, our principals, our teachers who are also thinking innovatively. And so as using your example about K-Tech, Ms. Rasnick and I've had conversations about, what are the number of students that we have there? Is there a way for that to be a split position? Is there a way to repurpose what we already have there? So those are the types of conversations. That we've been having. It's definitely, I think when we talk about what we presented to you all, we're talking about needs. And so one of the things that we have here are like the enrollment positions. So you see in red there that in our initial budget, we had the 7.5. We had the 7.5 for our EL growth. And where does that pan? I don't want to misspeak. The EL positions are not all of them are in this budget, correct? All of them, yes. So all of them are. So all of the EL positions did make it into this budget. But the big thing is you see like specialists and interventionists, and those things are vitally important. When I showed you why it's important to look at the disadvantage, chart. I mean, this is why. When we talk about interventionists, because the data says our Black students, the data says it's students who are economically disadvantaged. And so that's where we want to gear our attention to when we talk about interventionists. We have schools that are marked as level 3 in areas. And so these things are vitally important. Yes, Ms. Burns.
Dr. Gurley, when you talk about what our students need, I'm reminded of our welcome back that we had on November 27th. And we had a lot of community members here. A lot of great folks in the community came out and shook hands and welcomed our students back. And it was great to see so many folks here. And I want to make sure I capture this correctly. Mayor Snook at the time was here and stated that he was happy to be here and that the problems that were entering the schools are actually coming in from the community. He said that he wanted to show CHS students, teachers, staff, and city leaders support that we're trying to do this work during the reset. And he said that community problems merit community solutions. And so what I am saying, we're going to need to do better from the city. The city needs to do better. This budget that you've presented shows community-based needs. The children coming into our school need these services. Our night students need these services. These are the students that Mr. Snook was talking about when he stood on that front porch. And I'm asking him and the council to do better and to support the work that we need to do to take care of our students here. And one more thing, if I could, because I'm on it now. And I've talked about care and safety CSAs in our schools before. Pay them. Pay them to do the work that we need them to do. and appreciate the work that we need them to do. And we've seen that in our PTO, a shift from bringing snacks and supporting services for our teachers to now including our CSAs and including our support workers. If we are going to do the work of supporting everyone in our schools, we need the city to do the work of supporting everyone in our schools. The attendance specialist that you have on here, I don't love that name. You know, I don't love that.
I
name.
know.
We're going to name that something else and we're going to put it back in the budget because those people are important. Those people are the ones that are going to knock on doors, help families navigate the system, find out why our students are not here, get them back in the building, and get them in a classroom. This is the restorative justice work that you all are asking for, and that I, as a member of this board, am also asking for. And that work is important because it's about relationships. And when we ask the city to do their part, this is what we're asking for.
Yes, ma'am. And I know what my thought was when I was thinking about the ESL positions, the growth positions, that this does not include the 2 positions that we were requesting at the high school level. That was removed from that. And keep in mind that that's about keeping our at the high school level in the English classes, that's about keeping the English class 24 students or less. All right. Any other questions? I will do the next slide, Ms. Thacker. So here you see that we had a decrease in almost $3 million from state revenue, 2.999. We had a decrease in state revenue. We have the increase in the 1% bonus. So if I'm saying this correctly, that's their contribution towards what we're supposed to give all of our teachers to make that happen, correct? And so poorly stated that that's just a drop in the bucket. And so also to make this budget happen, we would need to use about $772,000 of fund balance, which Ms. Torres, which she just gave me the look over her glasses, which it creates this cliff again, right? So next year, this time, we will need to figure out how we can make this budget happen, knowing that what we put into this year's budget was $772,000 from the fund balance. Okay. And then our request, well, not our request, our what we're being given from the city is $6 million. And so the next slide shows you what it all looks like, minus the yellows and red. This is what it looks like on one slide. And so what you see here, and so this is our clean copy of it, and you'll see that the 2% raises at the top, our step increase for the teachers is there, the $564,000. The implementation of the Evergreen plan, bringing all of those pay plans to one and decreasing that compression. You see the recurring cost there. You see in terms of school-based supports, what's being added. So we went from the yellow to the one line there, which is our English language learner growth. And then you see the revenues. You see the revenues at the bottom.
So to be clear, the FTE that's there, those are both English language learner positions, or is one the elementary position for the 2nd grade or 4th grade classroom that only has 2 teachers?
It's either or.
So again, making it clear for folks, we're either going to have larger elementary class sizes.
Absolutely.
Or larger ratios of teachers to English language learners.
Yes. And I think that that's the advocacy piece, because again, we are not being impacted by birth rate. It is our English language learners, which we welcome. The next slide. Oh, did you have a question?
I mean, I don't mean to beat a, I don't know what you want to call this. But again, if we could look back at that yellow, I mean, I just, again, at all of those things, and those were requests that you and your team received based on needs for our students, for our schools.
Right, not all of them.
No, and this isn't even all of them.
Oh, and this is not,
No,
most
so
of,
I need whoever's here, whoever's listening abroad, whoever looks at this later, they need to understand this. That all of these, I mean, this was teachers prioritizing and asking and saying, we need site-based substitutes, and the difference that it would make for the student or the teachers and the students in the buildings. So, I mean, this was our administration, our superintendent and his team listening to what staff needed and what our students needed. And we can't make it happen.
Yep.
So I just, again.
and I think repeatedly in my conversations, particularly with teachers, I mean, they value, I mean, we heard a lot of these things from them, but and I always like to shout out Miss Gilligan because she's back there, but she heard this, we've heard the site-based substitutes. And so, I mean, unfortunately, we have basically $3 million to work with. All right.
Chair, excuse me. Before we get too far, going back to that, I would like to suggest we instruct the superintendent to come back with a budget that is $3 million more than what he's showing right here, and bring that to the budget hearing next week and work with teachers to prioritize another additional $3 million of spending, so that we're not seeing all these positions that I think we all identified needed. So we're basically going back to the city and saying, again, we don't think the 6 million is additional. So, all right, we need more than that. We need basically additional 3 million.
Well, I don't think any of us disagree with it, that we'd love to have at least another $3 million, but I think what he has to do tonight is present a balanced budget based on what the city is saying that they will give us. So that's what we're seeing. So yes, we might have some other slides or a presentation saying we'd like to add A, B, C, and D, which is a lot of this, but we can't really change the budget.
That would be fine with me. I think we should have that slide that shows an additional $3 million to spend and what it means and what the teachers requested. Thanks.
So I just want to make sure, we have a work session next week. So this evening, we have a balanced budget. At the meeting next week, what we can do is we can take the yellow and we can create scenarios that if we are given if we're given $3 million additional, these are some scenarios that we could take back.
Because what I imagine is going to happen is we're going to learn what the city is going to be increasing their staff rates at, what their pay is going to be, which is going to be probably more than what we're going to be offering to our staff. What we know is that we're not getting our surpluses based on the increased revenue that the city is seeing actually from their personal and real property taxes. So I think it's only fair, we can make arguments, very clear arguments that we should be getting this additional folks. I saw that what they're asking for is an increase in their general operating budget at 7.28%. We're not asking for that much. We're only asking for an increase of ours is 5.88 right now. Anyway, so all those things is like, I want to make sure we have those alternative scenarios where, again, it's not all this, but we've prioritized based on our original ask that we can have a political discussion with our counselors about. Thanks.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we encourage, again, those who are here, those who are not here, the community organizations that we work with to pound the pavement and get to work and email your counselors and let them know this is a priority. This is a priority for our community. This is a priority for our students and our staff. And we're gonna need all in. You were all in on November 27th. I'm going to need y'all in next week.
Sorry, Superintendent, one last question. I know we've had surpluses in the past that we've given back to the city. Can you just clarify, was that money because we didn't spend the money, or had you gotten creative in how you
No.
basically worked with the city staff to
Yeah.
save money?
I'll
for
give Ms.
everybody?
Powell, she could do a much better job than me, she and Ms. Hoover.
So great question. The larger gain sharing that has happened over the past couple years with the city was an intentional plan that we worked out with the city in order to do two things. One, we had ESSER money flooding in that just has certain specific allowable uses. Instruction, the mental health supports, cleaning and sanitation, those types of things. Those are operational supports, and you've got one-time money. We see this one-time money flooding in that needs to be spent on a certain deadline. At the same time, we have a large middle school project that we are all pushing so hard to get across the finish line in the face of unprecedented inflation. So one of the things that previous boards did, Ms. Hoover and I, city finance staff, is we worked together very hard to see what, as a school board, you could bring to the table. You have no taxing authority, so you can't generate revenue, but what can be done responsibly? And so because we already have the gain share mechanism in place, we were able to take the ESSER money, intentionally fund ongoing operations with it that fully meet the criteria of the ESSER funds. And at the same time, enabling the board, putting the board in a position to intentionally have those surpluses to help fund the middle school and keep that project on track for full scope. Because people need to remember, we didn't know until almost the 12th hour, one, that there would even be grant support available, and two, that we would be awarded a grant. And so when that happened, that took a lot of pressure off, but there's still a lot of CIP demands, as you all know. So that money was, it was an intentional plan done jointly with the city, and it's in the CIP. And if anyone has any questions about that effort, Ms. Hoover was kind enough to point out back for us, one of the more recent times that we described that plan in our presentations was the December 5th fiscal year end recap presentation, slide 5. But more importantly, if you look at the city's materials, their March 30th CIP presentation, the city's CIP presentation, speaks very specifically to how we use the gain share to help fund the project. Also, they have a narrative in their FY24 budget book online that does a beautiful job of describing the intentional work that was done together collaboratively to help ensure that we would have those surpluses to try to keep that middle school project on track.
Ms. Powell, while you're up there, maybe you could answer. The track lighting project that we've heard about this evening, would that be a CIP project, or could that be a line item on our budget?
So it is definitely a CIP project. It should be, it's, one-time investment. It's a CIP project. We did plan for the lights, and so some good work was done to at least get the poles in place and all that. Again, the CIP list is very long, but that is a very important project that we've had our eyes on for some time.
Since you talked about the middle school
Thank you.
project, I just don't want the push for funding of the middle school project to be used against us in budgets, like the city's negligence in pushing that project off for decades and not planning for it appropriately, shouldn't now penalize us in asking for money. So I don't want the narrative to be, well, we gave you $100 million last year to fund the middle school project, so, we can't offer more this year. And so just throwing that out there. And since I think we did have some CEA reps, including our CEA president in the room, there she is. When we were at the table working on the resolution, one of the pieces that was a bargaining piece for you was talking about how you could be our partner in going to the city. And so I think this is the moment, right, where we can really put this into action and show how collective bargaining can really be a model for supporting our schools and is not combative. We are truly on the same side and trying to fund what we know you need. So rally the troops. Wednesday, is it Wednesday? When are we together again? Wednesday, sometime soon at Walker. Please come help us. Oh, and if you haven't checked your city tax assessments, what is it? 98% of residential assessments increased by an average of 5.5%. So the city's getting some more money.
I don't know what slide we're on, but
We're
I
just
think
as passionate as you are, sir.
okay. I think we are, so we did, yeah, so we did that slide. So let's do the next slide. All right, sorry. So here go our essential actions. So we do want to leverage, so our proposed budget is leveraged on one-time funds from CCS fund balance. And we know that, there are unintended consequences, and that's creating this cliff. But most certainly in this moment, in order to ensure that we value our people and provide some of the bare minimum things that we don't, to provide those bare minimum things, then we are going to have to leverage those funds. We are giving, we're going to give the salary increase for our teachers. And that's the equivalent of the 1%. That's the 1% bonus. So we're not going to do the 1%. We want to do the step, which is an average of 1.25, 1.25. Our positions to CCS to verify to the DOE that we met our minimum pay requirements. So we make sure that we do all of those things. And then just ensuring that we are aligning our strategic plan to retain our staff. And again, one thing, when we started this process, we sent out a survey and people said, let the strategic plan be your guiding document in terms of our budget. And then front loads the FY26 appropriation, like the 2%. So we need to just keep those things in mind. Our next slide shows the 2023 and 2024 amended budget and where we landed with the $107 million. If you look at the proposed budget for 24-25, you will see that we are proposing $116 million. That's a change of about $8.4 million. And I think to our point earlier about when we talk about the cities asking where we are landing, it's about 7%, 7.82%.
Dr. Gurley, a lot of that is, again, at least on the special revenue increase, again, is from K-Tech and us now getting revenue in from all the other districts, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think when that to me is again considered separate, and that's why I got my 5.88 number. And I would like to think that's the number we need to be carrying to the city. Anyways, thanks.
That is correct. So as we onboard K-Tech, that does increase that special revenue line, which can be a little bit misleading. So let's look ahead. So we know that there will be subject to change some things with the governor's budget. So we are keeping our eye on that. Next week, I think Ms. Dooley's words were rally the troops, her words. So we will be at Walker for our joint meeting with the city council to have a very robust discussion about our budget. That should be Wednesday. That should be Wednesday. That should be Wednesday. That should be Wednesday. All right, I just changed it on the slide. If you refresh it, it's there. So Wednesday, February the 7th, next Wednesday, February the 7th at 5 o'clock at the Walker, in the Walker cafeteria. There's another budget work session that following week. And that's on Thursday, February the 15th, and at the Walker cafeteria. And then on the 22nd of February, we will be right back here. where we will seek approval of the final budget. And then on March the 4th, we will present the budget at City Hall. A lot of work will happen between now and then. A lot of people at the table, a lot of work that needs to happen to advance our students' needs forward. And the last slide says questions, reads questions. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Meyer.
One last thing, sorry, I just am looking at the city's budget presentation from yesterday. And for our colleagues, they did include the Walker Pre-K CIP money. So again, if folks are also going to be talking to their counselors and something like that, I think it's very important to reflect and recognize that. That is a $30 million spend or an FY27, FY28. So that was a very, again, they wholly control that. We have no control, again, I hope people understand, under the CIP budget. We have no control over that other than, again, asking them to do that. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Ms. Burns, anything else? No? Mr. Morris, Ms. Cooper? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. All right, the next section 11.0 is board response to written reports, and this is where we post committee reports and outcome of any student disciplinary matters that have come before us in the last month. So those are available for community viewing. And now we will open it up again for our second opportunity for comments from members of the community. So please come forward, state your full name, address, and you got 3 minutes.
Okay. Hello. I'm Shannon Gillikin. I live on Orangedale Avenue and I am a CCS parent, teacher, and CEA president. Don't worry, Miss Dooley, we're coming. I do have to express some disappointment and be honest. I found, Miss Powell, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, actually. I found your presentation extremely heavy-handed and biased. I've found it that way since November when you presented to the parents in the cafeteria. All we heard tonight was why we need metal detectors in SROs. We didn't hear anything about the success of the CSA program, except from you, Ms. Burns. We made a huge, courageous shift in 2020 and 2021. And that shift was made by a committee doing research and work and by our school board making a decision. Any change to that plan needs to be done the same way. This should not be a staff decision. This is your decision. And it needs to be done well. And you need to make sure, as you all said, that we overcome the shortcomings of a survey and that we really hear from everyone, particularly marginalized voices, as you said, Ms. Torres. You guys are really good at asking questions and asking for education. I don't feel what the presentation gave you was fair education tonight, and I am asking you to do more work and more research, and I'm asking our staff to do a better job presenting on the success that we currently have, because it is there. And we need to pay our CSAs way more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Total support for what Shannon was just saying. Can y'all hear me? Do I need to lean a little bit? Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Also, I've been leaning. I didn't need to this whole time. Well, I wanted to say that I'm ready to fight like hell for that budget that y'all are showing, that 3 million. And I can bring some buddies and I can bring some neighbors. But I want to ask, can we make it 3,055,000? Because I really, really would love to have a restorative justice specialist in our building. I just think it would make a real big difference to be part of our security, community, relationship building in the high school. Thanks, that's all.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Nope, one more.
Hi, I'm Amy Gardner, 753 Belmont Avenue, one junior at CHS. Love CHS. Dr. Gurley, thank you for all your hard work. School board, thank you for all your hard work. I feel your pain in the conversation about cell phones, because I wish we lived in a perfect world where I had not just checked my phone about 6 times while I was sitting in this meeting. However, as we say at work, I would like for you to think, is the juice worth the squeeze? So if we are talking about kids changing classes 6 times, 5 minutes a time, and lunch, it's less than an hour. We would be asking so much of staff and teachers. Is the juice worth the squeeze? On the other hand, no one has ever mentioned in the meetings I've attended that the bathrooms reek of pot. So can we put some energy that we would normally be putting into making sure kids don't look at their phones, into making sure that pot's not in school? Because I can't help but think that pot might actually be more of a problem at the end of the day than less than an hour of cell phone time. That's it. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Anybody online, Mr. Como, that would like to speak?
There's a few people online. It's the same thing. Just raise your hand if you wish to give a public comment, and we will promote you to speaking position, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to close that, and we will now move to comments from the board. And I'll actually start down here with Ms. Heafy. Is there anything else you'd like to add this evening?
Again, thank you guys for having me up here. Thank you guys for being here. Means a lot. There's a lot more work to be done. And I think that we should not shy away from that. The quickest decision doesn't matter in the long term when it goes against the best one, if that makes any sense at all. I have no idea. But you know, that the things we're talking about right now are real, and they're real for a lot of people at the school, a lot of different people in these schools. And all those voices need to be accounted for. I know we've all been here for a long time, so I won't keep you, but there are a lot more conversations to be had. And I'm encouraging everyone listening, whether you're on the board or you're listening, to do your part, to get the word out, to get, opinions going, because the only way for something to be successful is if it's representative, I think, of really everyone. And that's, I think, what should be prioritized. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dooley.
So it's been a long night with some heavy conversations and discussion. So I just want to take us back to how we started and thank and recognize our teachers again, who were recognized as Teachers of the Year for their respective buildings. And they're representative of so many. And so just, again, gratitude for the people that are just pouring themselves into our students every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper.
I just want to thank all of the folks that came out and spoke tonight. Also, thanks to the amazing teachers for all of the great work that you're doing. Also, I want to highlight, because I don't think we do a good job of highlighting our student athletes, and it's been a lot of great things happening. And so I want to take this time to highlight all of our student athletes for the amazing job that they're doing in and out in the classroom and outside of the classroom. I have been attending some of the sporting events, and I can say that I'm proud to be a Black Knight, and I want to say congratulations to all of the student athletes.
Thank you. Mr. Morse.
Yes, I just want to take a moment to recognize Black History Month. And with that, I would like to read a statement from a court case in 1962. This is an appeal of the Dotson versus Charlottesville City School Board. And just one paragraph in this, The cross appeal by the school board in this case relates to the judgment of the district court that non-Negro high school pupils who were excluded by the board from the Lane High School be admitted to that institution. Subsequently, the board admitted 2 of the 9 as to them, the cross appeal is expressly abandoned in the board's brief in this court. 4 of the remaining 7 were before this court in the Dotson case, where we noted that they had been excluded from Lane for academic deficiency and said that residents in academic tests may be properly applied in passing on the applications for admission to a school, provided that the factors of race and color are not considered. Since it was shown that the tests were not applied to white children in the same situation, we held that the 4 plaintiffs had been discriminated against. Nevertheless, we affirm the judgment below in the confident belief that discrimination between the races in the admission of high school students will be eliminated by the board itself. In this respect, our hopes have been disappointed. And I read this today because I want to bring significance to the role that we have on this board. To many people in our community, we are the system. And the same goes for city council. And I think it's going to be very important and we're already doing it, but I think taking an extra step to challenge our beliefs, challenge what we hold dear, and looking for something, I don't want to say new, but pushing the boundary more and looking for ways to make sure that we're addressing all of our students. Today's conversation was a lot about our budget and our L's. We've talked about safety. We've talked about a lot of things that we just need to keep pushing forward on. And I'll just say this. In no situation do I want us as a board or even city council to have someone in the future look at us and say, how did they believe? How did they believe this was the right case? And I think for us institutionally, looking at pedagogy, looking at our practices and our policy, and even down to simple things as the color of paint for school buses, we can challenge our traditional beliefs. So happy Black History Month. Some of our history is more recent than you know. In this case, particularly, there's a gentleman that you could drive by while he's picking his fruit and his vegetables out of his garden, and you would never know that he was a part of this. But our history lives here today.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Ms. Burns. Mr. Meyer? Nope, we're back to you.
I'll just say it again. Please show up. Show up next week. Do your homework. Talk to a teacher. Talk to your kids. Ask them if they did a survey. I asked my kid, guess what? He didn't do it. He's not doing it. That's why I think, again, Ms. Cooper's point, how we communicate with our kids matters. Did you read that newsletter, Chris? No, he didn't. We have to think outside the box and how we're getting this data, getting this information, and doing this work. And again, I'll appreciate our CSAs for the work that they do and how they support our teachers. And yeah, they need to be paid more and we need to do better. Everyone needs to do better. And so I hope everyone gets the opportunity to have a pointed conversation again with their students and teachers and ask what's important to them and what they're experiencing every day. And be the advocates that our kids need and our teachers and our staff. Thank you.
Sorry, last thing, I promise. I just want to reiterate that this board is so willing to value student opinion. They value my opinion. They value the opinions of everyone here. As students, we need to take advantage of that. So I also encourage all of you guys to tell your kids to show up. I mean, hey, if I can sit here, you guys can, and I got a cupcake. Okay. So like there's some perks to it. But you know, like it's really, it's worth it. You know, if you want a change to happen, you have to put in the work, and whether that's showing up and making a comment, I'm telling you, these people will listen to you and it'll be worth it. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. I'm not going to say much. I've said a lot already, but I do appreciate teachers. I appreciate our principals, everybody that was highlighted this evening, and everybody within the division. And I appreciate each and every one of you board members and your voices up here and working with you all. So thank you. And Dr. Gurley, I'll turn it over to you.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I want to recognize each of the teachers of the year from all of our schools, and especially congratulations to Miss Gray. I think she's going to do a phenomenal job representing us regionally. And I was really moved with what was read by Mr. Morris, because we do have a big responsibility here. We are the system. And as the students remind me here, you are the man. And so, and I say that because, today when I walked up, a student asked me, where had I been? And I said, oh, I'm still here. I'm here. You just don't see me all day, but I'm still here. But what I left that student with is that it's a good thing you don't see me every day, because that means you figured it out. And so our kids will figure it out. We just have to figure out how to sustain this momentum and how to not react, and not react. We just have to sustain and build the future. I appreciate you all with love.
Thank you, sir. Any work session wrap up, Ms. Swift?
So we had one request to provide the cell phone research articles to the team in regards to the safety model. So we'll make sure we do that.
Thank you.
Could we include the options for the work session in terms of what Mr. Meyer was asking, and the opportunity to have an extra 3 million?
Absolutely. I didn't take it as a.
We're going.
Okay, all right, cool.
Thank you. Okay, upcoming meetings again, just to repeat and reiterate and emphasize, and again, February 7th, next Wednesday, joint work session, city school boards with the city council. February 15th, another work session for the school board at Walker. February 22nd, approval of the proposed budget from the superintendent here in the media center, and March 7th would be our next school board meeting here at 5 o'clock. So with that being said, I would like to adjourn this meeting and thank everybody, and have a great night and be safe.